Rain sheeted down on the old Collins farmhouse, swallowing the countryside in grey, as Emily Stewart turned her sedan onto the gravel drive. The house, 2 stories of battered white siding and an uneven porch, hunched beneath sagging oaks like it was trying to vanish into the storm. Emily parked and killed the engine, listening for a moment to the wipers slapping back and forth, a rhythm that matched her nerves. She checked her notes. Maria Collins, numerous calls in the past week. He's not my son anymore. Something is wrong. Please someone come before it gets worse. Emily stepped out, rain slapping her cheeks, clutching her satchel close as she hurried up the porch steps. She'd handled her share of anxious parents, overworked mothers, kids acting out, and rural gloom. But the sense of dread tonight, the way the shadows seemed to pool around the porch light, felt different. Before she could knock, the door jerked open. Maria Collins stood framed in the yellow light, hair mussed, eyes red-rimmed and wild. She wore a thick cardigan, her hands wringing the hem as if trying to twist herself awake from a nightmare. "Miss Stewart," Maria's voice quavered, barely louder than the wind. Emily nodded, holding up her badge. "Yes, Maria. I'm from Child Protective Services. We spoke earlier." "Come in," Maria said, her eyes darting to the storm behind Emily, as though afraid something might crawl in from the darkness. Emily stepped inside, instantly aware of the heavy warmth and the faint sour smell, like damp carpets, and something else, something metallic lingering in the air. She noticed the way Maria immediately shut the door, sliding the deadbolt with trembling fingers. "I know what this sounds like," Maria whispered, "but it's not just. He's not just acting out. There's something inside him. Please, you have to believe me." Emily glanced down the hallway. Dim lamps flickered, making shadows crawl along the wallpaper. "Can we sit? You can tell me what's been happening. Where's Jacob now?" Maria nodded, leading her down the hall toward the living room. He's in there. He doesn't sleep anymore. He just sits. Sometimes he talks to someone who's not there, or he doesn't talk at all. Sometimes he says things he couldn't know. Things about my father, about things from before I was even born." Emily caught sight of Jacob as they entered the room. He sat on a battered couch, knees tucked to his chest, facing the wall. A single lamp cast a weak cone of light, pooling around him. He was thin, hair uncombed, barefoot despite the chill. He hummed quietly, a slow, tuneless melody that made Emily's skin prickle. "Jacob," Emily called gently, stepping closer. "My name's Emily. I'm here to talk with you and your mom." The boy didn't answer, just kept humming, rocking slowly back and forth. Maria hovered by the door, hands twisting. "See, he'll do that for hours, sometimes all night. Then he'll stop and say something strange, or he'll laugh in this voice, like it's coming from the walls." Emily knelt beside Jacob, careful not to startle him. "Hey there, Jacob. Can you tell me what you're humming? Is it a song you know?" He stopped, still facing the wall. "She's listening," he whispered, voice flat and eerily calm. Emily's mouth went dry. "Who's listening, Jacob?" He turned his head slowly, eyes wide and too dark in the lamplight. "The lady in the wires. She comes at night when it's loud. She says she'll take me somewhere cold if I'm not quiet." Emily tried to keep her tone steady. "Is the lady here now?" He stared through her, unblinking. "She's everywhere." Maria let out a tiny sob, clamping a hand over her mouth. "Jacob, do you want to tell me how you're feeling? Is anything hurting? Has anything happened at school?" He began to rock again, harder this time, and his humming grew louder, the same broken tune. Emily stood, motioning for Maria to step into the kitchen. She lowered her voice. "How long has he been like this?" Maria wiped her eyes. "It started 3 weeks ago. At first I thought it was nightmares, but then he started saying things about my mother's accident, things I never told him. And he draws these pictures you need to see. A loud click made them both jump. The lamp in the living room buzzed, then sputtered out. Darkness flooded the hallway. Jacob's humming grew louder, now just a strange chant in the blackness. "I'll get a flashlight," Maria whispered, voice barely steady. "Power goes out here, all the time in storms." Emily stood in the near dark, pulse pounding. She listened to the wind battering the old house, to Jacob's voice weaving through the shadows. Something about the storm and the silence between the boys' words pressed on her chest like a warning. Maria returned with a flashlight, its narrow beam catching Jacob's face. He sat frozen, lips parted, his gaze distant as though watching something none of them could see. Emily took a deep breath, forcing calm. "It's just a storm," she told herself. "Just a scared boy. Just another late-night visit." But when Jacob turned to look at her, his eyes glimmering in the beam, she felt a shiver go through her bones, because for a split second, it looked like he was smiling. Maria's hand shook as she handed Emily the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing the threadbare rug, the lopsided coffee table, and Jacob's small frame still perched on the edge of the sofa. The storm outside was growing stronger, thunder rolling so close it rattled the window glass. For a moment, Emily considered insisting Maria and Jacob leave for the night, to go somewhere safer, somewhere with more people, more light. But Maria had the look of someone who'd already run out of places to go. Emily crouched by Jacob again. "Can you tell me what you're thinking about, Jacob?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. Instead, he started humming again, louder this time. The tune was off-key, not quite a song, but almost familiar. It felt older than any nursery rhyme Emily could remember. The hair on her arm stood up. She turned to Maria, searching for something concrete. "You mentioned drawings. Can I see them?" Maria nodded and shuffled down the hallway. Emily stood, shining the flashlight after her, its pale circle trembling over faded photographs and water-stained wallpaper. The house felt even colder now, as if the power outage had sucked away all the warmth, leaving the storm to fill the empty spaces. While Maria was gone, Emily tried the living room lamp. She twisted the switch, but nothing happened. She reached for her phone. No signal, just a blank bar and a useless SOS symbol. The storm must have knocked down a line. She glanced at Jacob, whose eyes tracked the flashlight, but who otherwise didn't move. She said, "You were having trouble sleeping, Jacob. Are you scared of something at night?" He paused his humming, and after a long silence, said, "The cold lady comes in when the lights are off. She stands by my door and whispers. Sometimes she crawls on the ceiling." Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Does she ever hurt you?" Jacob's eyes flickered. "She says she will, if I talk too much. She says Mama should have listened." Footsteps in the hall. Maria reappeared, clutching a bundle of paper. She handed it over with shaking hands. "He draws them at night. Sometimes he wakes up with ink on his fingers, but he doesn't remember." Emily angled the flashlight down. The drawings were rough, done in black ballpoint, on loose-leaf paper. The first was of a woman, tall, thin, all sharp angles, and empty eyes, standing behind a boy in bed. Another showed a twisted figure, crawling across the ceiling, its hands far too long. On a third, an ancient house loomed, windows black, something indistinct peering out. Each page was worse than the last, lines growing more frantic, figures hidden in shadows, faces scratched out. One page showed a tangle of wires, and a woman's head in the middle, her mouth open wide as if screaming. Emily's heart hammered as she flipped to the last drawing. Jacob asleep, while something dark crept up the wall behind him. "Has he always drawn things like this?" Emily whispered. Maria shook her head. "He used to draw superheroes, animals, silly things. Then 3 weeks ago, he changed. He hardly eats. He hardly sleeps. Sometimes I wake up, and he's just standing by my bed, staring at me. She lowered her voice. I started locking my door. Thunder boomed overhead. In the flashlight's narrow beam, Maria's face looked even paler. I've tried everything. I took him to the doctor. They said it was stress, maybe trauma, but Jacob hasn't seen anything. Nothing like that's happened. I called the church, but Father Mark said he couldn't help. Emily wanted to offer comfort, but her mind spun with questions. Something wasn't adding up. Has anyone else noticed changes in Jacob? At school with friends? Maria shook her head. He doesn't have many friends. He was always a quiet boy, but now the neighbors avoid us. They say they hear things at night. I hear them too. Voices, footsteps upstairs when I know he's asleep. Sometimes the house gets so cold, I can see my breath. Last week, I found all the mirrors in the house fogged up, but the rest of the windows were clear. Emily gripped the bundle of drawings tighter. Maria, has Jacob ever talked about seeing or hearing things before this started? No, not once. I swear. Maria's voice cracked. I'm not crazy, Miss Stewart. There's something here. Something with him. I don't know how to get rid of it. From the living room, Jacob's humming rose sharply, turning into a keening wail that made both women jump. The flashlight shook in Emily's hand as she rushed back. Jacob was standing now, facing the blank television, hands clenched at his sides, eyes unfocused. Jacob, Emily called. He didn't turn. His mouth moved, but the sound that came out was nothing Emily recognized. A guttural foreign whisper layered beneath his cry, like two voices tangled together. Maria crossed herself, whispering a prayer. A sudden metallic crash echoed from the kitchen, like pots thrown across the floor. The house seemed to hold its breath, every sound amplified by the darkness. Emily's voice trembled. Maria, stay close. I need to see what that was. But her gut twisted with dread. Each step toward the kitchen, feeling like a descent into something they could no longer explain or control. Emily forced herself forward, the beam of her flashlight slicing through the thick gloom. Each step toward the kitchen felt heavier, as if the house itself was weighing her down, as if the air was thickening with every second the lights stayed out. The noise that had come from the kitchen had sounded violent, a sudden crash of metal, and then a silence so deep it pressed against her ears. Maria trailed behind, her knuckles white as she clung to the back of Emily's shirt. It's just the wind, Maria whispered, but her voice wavered, betraying a hope that was already cracking. The kitchen was colder than the rest of the house. Emily swept the flashlight around. The linoleum gleamed wetly, reflecting the yellowed beam. The old refrigerator hummed softly, a lifeline, still running, plugged into the emergency circuit, but the rest of the appliances were dead, and the stove clock was blank. A saucepan lay upside down on the floor, spinning gently to a stop. A drawer had been yanked open, its contents, forks, knives, spatulas, scattered in a mess of metal and wood. Emily checked the windows. All were shut tight, rain hammering against the glass, but not a single pane was broken. The back door was locked, the deadbolt in place. Could Jacob have done this? Emily asked quietly. Maria shook her head, her voice just a rasp. He hasn't left the living room all night. Not once. I would have heard him. But as Emily turned to look back down the hallway, she saw that Jacob was no longer on the couch. He had left behind only a faint indentation, and a crumpled piece of drawing paper on the cushion. His humming, which had been echoing through the house, had stopped. Now the only sound was the relentless rain, and Maria's shallow breathing. Jacob, Emily called, her voice louder than she intended. She strained to hear any response. Footsteps, humming, a laugh, nothing. Maria swayed on her feet. He does this. He disappears. Sometimes I find him in the basement, or standing at the top of the stairs in the dark, just waiting, like he's listening for something." Emily's skin crawled. She stepped back into the hallway, scanning for movement. The flashlight beam quivered over the wallpaper, catching old family portraits. Maria as a teenager, a man who must have been her late husband, and Jacob as a smiling toddler. The photographs felt like relics from a different life before the darkness settled in. A floorboard creaked above. Both women jerked their heads up. "He's in my room," Maria whispered. Emily nodded. "Let's go together. Stay close." They moved carefully up the stairs, each step a groan in the old wood. The air was stouler up here, thick with dust and the faint trace of something burnt. Emily's hand shook as she tried the handle to Maria's bedroom. It was unlocked, swinging open to reveal a room in shambles. Dresser drawers pulled out and emptied onto the floor, the bed covers thrown aside, and the full-length mirror in the corner fogged over, though the glass was cold to the touch. Jacob stood in front of the mirror, motionless, his reflection shrouded in the fog. The flashlight's beam barely touched him, as if the darkness itself was thickening around his small frame. "Jacob," Maria whispered, reaching for him. But Jacob didn't turn. Instead, he began to draw his finger across the foggy mirror, sketching a crude shape, first a circle, then a pair of long arms, stretching downward, ending in sharp points. Emily watched, unease building, as Jacob's finger traced out a face, hollow eyes, a gaping mouth. Emily stepped closer, careful not to startle him. "Jacob, what are you drawing?" "She wants in," Jacob whispered, voice hoarse. "She says you shouldn't have brought them here." The air grew colder still. Maria wrapped her arms around herself. "Brought who?" "Jacob, who do you mean?" Jacob turned around, his face strangely blank. "You know her, Mama. You saw her when you were little. In the well." Maria staggered back, her eyes wild. "No, that's not possible. I never." Her voice cracked, and she shook her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. Emily felt something shift. The temperature seemed to drop further, her breath frosting faintly in the flashlight's weak glow. "Maria, what's he talking about?" Maria shook her head, gasping. "When I was a child, I saw something in the old well behind the house. My mother said it was just a nightmare. But she trailed off, staring at Jacob, as if seeing him for the first time. "I never told anyone, not a soul, not even my husband." Jacob began to laugh, a sound that didn't belong in a child's mouth, low, guttural, mocking. "She remembers. She always remembers when the lights go out." Emily's hand tightened on the flashlight. "Jacob, come away from the mirror. Come back downstairs with us." He shook his head, smile stretching too wide. "She's almost here. She likes the dark." Suddenly, the rain outside intensified, beating the roof like drumsticks. Somewhere in the house, something metal crashed again, a violent, echoing clang. The lights flickered for a split second, just long enough to cast strange warped shadows across the walls. Then the darkness thickened, swallowing the three of them, leaving only the thin trembling beam of Emily's light, and Jacob's laughter, spinning through the cold air. The laughter seemed to vibrate through the beams and bones of the house, twisting into something wild and ugly. Maria shrank against the wall, the crucifix at her neck gripped so tight, her knuckles went white. Emily tried to focus. She'd handled breakdowns, she'd soothed frightened children, but nothing in her training prepared her for the sight of Jacob's too wide grin, his breath misting in the freezing air, as if winter had settled in the middle of July. "Jacob, come here now," Emily commanded, fighting to keep her voice steady. "We're all going back downstairs." But Jacob's eyes never left the mirror. The crude figure he'd drawn seemed to ripple in the fogged glass, the mouth gaping wider. With a small jerky motion, he pressed his palm flat against the reflection. The light from the flashlight sputtered and dimmed, shadows swimming up the walls. "She's almost here," Jacob murmured. "She's hungry." A chill swept through the room, making the curtains flutter as if a window had opened. Emily shone her flashlight around in panic, but all the windows were closed. The beam caught on a pattern scratched into the wooden floor, a circle ringed with jagged lines, drawn in something that looked like charcoal or soot. "Maria, do you see this?" Emily asked, crouching to examine the markings. Maria nodded shakily, hugging herself. "He started drawing them a week ago. They're everywhere, on the doors, in the attic. I wash them away, and they come back." Jacob began to whisper, his voice layered, as if two people were speaking through him. "Let her in. She's cold. She needs a home." Emily reached for Jacob, trying to pull him away from the mirror, but as her fingers touched his shoulder, he went rigid. His mouth fell open, and a low guttural sound spilled out, a wordless moan that rose into a scream. The room seemed to spin. For a split second, Emily's flashlight caught the reflection in the mirror, Jacob's face, and behind him, a woman's silhouette, impossibly tall and thin, features lost in a swirl of darkness, her arms stretching for the boy. Maria screamed, stumbling backward and falling hard against the dresser. The crucifix slipped from her neck and landed on the floor, skittering across the scratched wood toward the circle. Jacob's body twisted in Emily's grasp, his head jerking back at an unnatural angle. For an instant, the air was filled with the smell of burned earth and wet leaves. Emily's mind raced. She shoved Jacob away from the mirror, wrapping both arms around him. "Maria, get the light. Anything. A candle. Your phone. Just bring more light." Maria scrambled to her knees, her hands fumbling for her purse, her phone, a lighter, anything to push back the dark. The storm outside shrieked, wind and rain, hammering at the glass. Jacob thrashed, but Emily held him fast. "You're safe," she whispered fiercely, her own fear tasting like metal in her mouth. "You're safe, Jacob. You're here with us." The boy's voice changed, a raspy adult tone echoing from his lips. "You can't help him. You never could. You left her alone." Maria froze, staring at Jacob as if seeing a ghost. "No," she whispered. "I was just a child." "You saw her," Jacob sneered, his eyes glinting. "You left her at the well. Now she's come for your son." Emily shouted, "Enough," and dragged Jacob away from the mirror, the flashlight beam trembling as she pulled him toward the doorway. Maria, sobbing, scrambled after them, her phone finally flickering to life. The cold white screen, casting pale light that seemed to slow the creeping dark. They rushed down the hallway, Jacob kicking and twisting, Maria behind with the weak glow of her phone. As they passed the stairwell, a sudden impact rattled the door below, like fists or claws battering at the wood. The front door shuddered in its frame. Emily and Maria hurried Jacob down the stairs, nearly stumbling in the dark. Maria fumbled for a candle on a nearby shelf, her fingers slick with sweat. She struck a match, her hands shaking, and the candle flared to life, throwing long shadows up the walls. In the flickering light, the living room looked wrong. Every picture on the wall had fallen, lying face down. The drawings that had been stacked on the table were now scattered across the floor. The images of the woman and the wires, warped by water leaking from the ceiling. A deep, bone-cold draft snaked through the house, swirling around their ankles. Jacob collapsed onto the rug, shivering. Emily knelt beside him, trying to calm him, but his gaze was vacant, and unseeing. Maria sat on the couch, rocking herself, mumbling prayers under her breath. The house groaned and creaked with every gust of wind, the storm howling like an animal outside. For a long moment, nothing happened, just the sound of Jacob's ragged breathing, and the candle's flame bending in the draught. And then from the kitchen came a slow, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Emily stared at the kitchen doorway, her heart pounding. A shadow flickered, impossibly tall, stretching along the wall, and the faint smell of wet earth grew stronger. Maria reached out and gripped Emily's arm. "We have to do something. We have to make it stop." Emily nodded, determination hardening her fear. "We will. We have to hold on till morning. Just keep the light. Don't let the dark win." The candle flame guttered in the draught, wavering wildly as the dragging noise in the kitchen grew closer, each scrape and bump sounding impossibly loud in the hush between thunderclaps. Maria squeezed Emily's arm so tightly, it hurt. Jacob shivered on the rug, eyes rolling back, breath whistling between his teeth, as if fighting something neither woman could see. Emily gritted her teeth and raised her voice. "Jacob, look at me. Jacob, can you hear me?" She shook his shoulder, desperate to break through. "Stay with me, sweetheart. We're here. We're not leaving you." But the boy only whimpered, curling tighter, hands balled into fists. The room was growing colder still. Emily could see her breath when she spoke. From the kitchen, the dragging stopped. Silence pressed in, a suffocating, watchful hush. Then softly, the sound of whispering began. Not words, exactly, but a thick susurration, like a radio between stations, layered with the suggestion of voices calling names, secrets, and old griefs. Maria began to sob quietly. "She's here. I know she is. I remember that voice. I heard it in my dreams, for years, always when the lights went out." She rocked back and forth, the crucifix clutched once more in her fist. "I never should have come back. I never should have had a child in this house." Emily scanned the room, searching for anything, a weapon, a barrier, something that could keep the thing at bay. Her gaze landed on Jacob's scattered drawings, pages wet and curling from the leaking roof. The symbols, the figures, she had seen something like them before, in a book about old folk rituals, stories from the region's earliest settlers, about keeping evil out with circles, candles, iron nails, and prayers. Desperate, she seized a handful of the drawings and began to arrange them in a rough circle around Jacob, pressing the papers flat against the worn rug. She added her flashlight, its weak beam pointed outward, and urged Maria to place the candle at the edge of the circle. "Stay inside the light," Emily said, more to convince herself than Maria. "It's just a storm, and we're not alone. We're together, and that's stronger than whatever's out there." But even as she said it, the shadows seemed to crawl closer. The whispering in the kitchen swelled, rising to a keening wail. A pressure built in Emily's ears, making her wince. The temperature kept dropping, and the smell of damp earth was overwhelming now, so strong she gagged. Jacob suddenly sat bolt upright, eyes wide and shining, but all wrong, too dark, as if they reflected no light at all. He stared straight at Maria, and spoke, but the voice that came from his mouth was not his own. It was a woman's voice, hollow and echoing, reverberating from the walls. You left me in the cold." Maria recoiled, covering her ears. No, I was a child. I didn't know. I couldn't help you." The voice went on, relentless. "You saw me. You looked down into the well, and saw what your mother hid. You let them cover me with earth. Now I am here, and I am hungry." Jacob's body convulsed, writhing on the rug. Emily, barely holding her own panic in check, pressed her hands to his shoulders and tried to anchor him. "You can't have him," she said through gritted teeth. "He's not yours. You don't belong here. Go back to the dark." The candle flame sputtered, nearly going out, then flared back to life. The flashlight flickered and glowed brighter. For a moment, Emily held on to Jacob and repeated, "Go back. You're not welcome here. This is not your home." The shadows recoiled, pulling back from the circle of light, but the voice in Jacob grew angrier. "I will not leave. Not until I am warm. Not until I am remembered." Maria, shaking and weeping, crawled across the circle, placing her hand on her son's. "If you need to be remembered, I remember you. I remember what happened. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her voice cracked. "You're not alone. You can rest now." The wind screamed against the windows, rattling the panes, and the house seemed to tremble. Then with a sudden sharp crack, the power surged back on. The lamps in the living room flickered to life. The heater rumbled, and warm yellow light washed away the shadows clinging to the walls. Jacob collapsed against Emily's shoulder, limp and sobbing. The voice was gone. The kitchen had fallen silent, the dragging and whispering erased in the hum of electricity. Maria gathered Jacob in her arms, rocking him gently, as she sobbed with relief and exhaustion. "It's over," she whispered. "You're safe, baby. You're safe." Emily held the candle with shaking hands, watching the flame burn steady at last. Outside, the storm slowly eased, rain fading to a whisper. The house felt lighter, as if something heavy had finally departed. Later, as Emily gathered her things and prepared to leave, Jacob slept fitfully on the couch, pale but breathing easy. Maria, though still shaken, managed a weary smile. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know what we would have done if you hadn't come." Emily hesitated in the doorway, feeling the weight of everything that had happened pressing on her chest. "If anything else happens," she said quietly, "you call me. Day or night, you're not alone." She stepped into the clearing dawn, the storm-washed air cold and clean. Yet as she reached her car and looked back, she saw Maria watching from the window, Jacob's small face beside hers. For a moment, Emily thought she saw a shadow flicker behind them, the faintest impression of a tall woman in the gloom. But when she blinked, there was nothing there but the soft glow of morning, and the silence of a house that for now was at peace. Night had settled thick over Meadow Lake, the kind of night that swallowed streetlights and blurred the edges of everything. Officer Jack Miller sat behind the wheel of his cruiser, parked beneath the flickering sign of Ed's Quick Mart. He thumbed the rim of his coffee cup and watched the condensation roll down the glass. Nothing about this shift felt different until the radio crackled with the dispatch. "Unit 3, possible theft in progress. Ed's Quick Mart, suspect, on site." Jack let out a tired sigh, set the cup in the holder, and stepped into the hum of neon and moths. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, and Ed, tight-lipped behind the counter, nodded toward the back aisles. Jack didn't need the gesture. He saw her reflection in the glass doors of the refrigerator, a thin woman in a gray hoodie, jeans a size too big, head bowed, hair a messy tangle. She moved with a nervous energy, stuffing a sandwich into her battered tote bag. "Lena Hart," Jack called, keeping his tone even. She froze, eyes flashing. For a heartbeat, Jack thought she'd bolt, but instead she just slumped, setting the sandwich back on the shelf with a resigned sigh. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You know the drill." She nodded, offering her wrists, and he cuffed her gently. She looked tired more than dangerous, her eyes rimmed with red. He guided her to the cruiser, letting Ed know he'd be back to sort things out. As they pulled away from the curb, Lena spoke softly. "I really wasn't going to take it. I just wanted to feel full." Jack said nothing. He'd heard her say something like that before, almost word for word, on other nights, just like this one. At the station, the desk sergeant, a new guy, Sean, was yawning over paperwork. Got one for booking. Lena Hart, petty theft, Jack replied, guiding her to the desk. Sean began typing her information into the system. Jack uncuffed Lena and waited while Sean scanned her ID. Lena fidgeted, hugging her elbows, flinching at every metallic clack. Sean's brow furrowed. He hit a few more keys. "Ah, Jack, it says she's already in." Jack blinked. "What?" "Look." Sean spun the monitor around. On the screen was Lena's booking record, time-stamped 12 minutes ago. Mugshot, fingerprints, charge, intake officer's initials, all correct. Jack looked from the screen to Lena. She stared back at him, just as confused. "I haven't been here in, I don't know, a month." "Let me check the holding cells," Sean said, standing. Jack kept a firm but gentle hand on Lena's arm as they followed. At the end of the short hallway, Sean slid open the small window in the cell door. Inside, sitting cross-legged on the cot, was Lena, or someone who looked exactly like her. Same hoodie, same tangled hair, same wary look. Jack's mouth went dry. The Lena beside him gasped. "Is that?" Sean swore under his breath. "It's gotta be a glitch, right? Some kind of error in the system." Jack tried to speak, but no words came. He looked at Lena, searching for some trick or sleight of hand, but the woman at his side was shaking, her hands clamped to her mouth, tears brimming. "I swear, I was at the store. I wasn't here." Sean hesitated. "Should I call the chief?" Jack took a slow breath. "Yeah, call him, and get dispatch to check security footage from the last hour." Sean hurried off. Jack looked again at the woman in the cell. She stared back, her face pale as paper, then turned away, curling up on the cot. He led Lena, his Lena, back to the main office, and sat her down, offering a bottle of water. She hugged herself, rocking gently. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "That woman looks just like me. She even has my shoes." Jack didn't answer. He felt the edges of his world start to fray. This was more than a computer glitch, more than a case of mistaken identity. He'd arrested Lena 3 times in as many months, always for the same things: shoplifting, trespassing, public disturbance. Every time, she'd seemed exhausted, as if living the same day over and over. He pulled up her record on the main office computer. The log showed 3 bookings that week alone, each entered by a different officer, each time stamped for different times. Mugshots, fingerprints, even interviews. Every detail matched Lena, but she'd only been picked up tonight. Jack glanced at Lena, saw her tracing the scar on her wrist, a nervous habit he'd noticed before. "Do you remember anything strange lately? Gaps in your memory? Dreams that don't feel like dreams?" Lena's lips quivered. "Sometimes I wake up in places I don't know. Sometimes I see people who look like me in my dreams, but they're not me. I don't know what's happening." Jack sat back, the night pressing in close through the station windows. The computer screen glowed, displaying 2 Lena Harts in the system, one in custody, one sitting right beside him. And out in the dark, the streetlights flickered, as if the world itself was struggling to stay awake. The station was quieter than usual the next morning, but Jack barely noticed the sunlight trickling through the blinds. He'd spent most of the night at his desk, staring at the booking logs and Lena's file, the details refusing to make any logical sense. He'd checked the cell more than once, expecting the other Lena to vanish, but each time he looked she was still there, silent, withdrawn, curled up with her knees to her chest, eyes tracking him whenever he passed. The Lena he'd brought in sat at the corner of the office, face in her hands, as if shrinking from the truth of her own existence. Sean came in with 2 coffees, and an uncertain smile. "Chief says it's got to be a system bug. He called it already." "You get any sleep?" "Not much," Jack muttered. He accepted the coffee, then motioned for Sean to sit. "Tell me again what you saw on the security cameras." Sean shrugged, glancing at Lena.
I watched the tapes twice. You can see you walk her in clear as day, but on another angle, about 5 minutes earlier, she's being led in by Officer Webb. Same clothes, same everything. I checked Webb's log. He was working the east side last night, nowhere near here. I texted him. He swears he hasn't seen Lena in weeks. Jack tried to process that, sipping the bitter coffee. So Lena was booked twice last night, by 2 different officers, in 2 different places. How can that be?
I dunno. Maybe a camera time sync issue, maybe. Hell, Jack, I don't know. But the intake officer's signature on both logs is mine. Sean stared at his hands. I don't remember booking her more than once. Jack turned to Lena. She was pale, dark circles etched under her eyes. Lena, do you have any family we could call for you? Someone to come stay with you, at least for today? She shook her head. Nobody local. My mom died a few years back. No siblings. Her voice dropped. I wish I did. Then maybe someone could tell me what's real. A heavy silence filled the office. Jack scrolled through more records, looking for any explanation. The timestamps on Lena's bookings were only minutes apart. Same intake form, same photo, same fingerprints. He pulled up her previous arrests. There were at least 6 more over the last year, all from officers who barely remembered the incidents, all with eerily similar notes. Suspect compliant, confused, seems tired. The phone rang. Jack answered. Miller. It was dispatch. You might want to check the main entrance. Jack, we've got another Lena Hart here. Came in with Deputy Ruiz. Shoplifting. Again. Jack's mouth went dry. Hold her in processing. Don't book her yet. Sean was staring at him, eyes wide. Jack said quietly, there's another one. 3rd Lena, in 12 hours. Lena flinched, clutching her elbows. Jack, what's happening to me? Jack moved quickly to the processing room. Deputy Ruiz stood near the door, confusion written all over his face. The woman sitting at the table looked up, and Jack's heart plummeted. It was Lena again, or someone who could have been her twin. She wore a different shirt, but her hair, her hands, even the way she glanced nervously at the clock, were all the same. Jack checked her fingerprints. Identical match. He ran her ID. Same birth date, same address. He felt his mind stretching, looking for seams. Lena, do you remember being here last night? She shook her head. I was at the shelter. I haven't been to the station in weeks. Why am I here? Jack walked her to the holding cell. Inside, the other 2 Lenas watched him with wide, silent eyes. For a moment, Jack felt dizzy, like a dream, where the world repeats and rewinds. He asked Sean to watch them, while he stepped outside for air. He dialed the chief, voice low. Sir, you're not going to believe this, but we have 3 Lena Harts in custody, all with the same records, same everything. There was silence. Then, Jack, you're overtired. Send me the files. I'll look myself. Maybe it's a bug in the database. It's not the system, Jack said, his voice thin. They're here, in person. I can see all 3. The chief's tone hardened. Keep it quiet. Get them separated, and start paperwork for a psych eval. And Jack, get some sleep. You sound like you need it. Jack hung up. He didn't feel tired anymore. He felt like something was wrong with the world itself, some fault line running right through Meadow Lake. When he came back inside, Sean said, I called Webb and Ruiz. Neither of them remembers picking up Lena. Their logs say they were on traffic stops across town, but the security footage has them bringing her in. Jack pulled out a fresh notepad and started writing, his mind grasping for a pattern. Time, location, names of officers, booking details. The only thing that changed from record to record was Lena's mood, sometimes anxious, sometimes furious, sometimes heartbreakingly lost. By the end of the day, Lena was sitting in 3 separate cells, each of them silent and scared, none able to explain the others. Word spread quietly through the department.
and Jack could feel the sideways glances from the rookie officers. Someone muttered doppelganger, and the word clung to the air, like static. Jack stayed late, poring over every file and video again. It felt less like a case, and more like a riddle carved into the bones of the town itself. And as dusk deepened beyond the station windows, he found himself afraid, not of Lena, but of what else might be out there, waiting to appear in the system next. Jack left the precinct long after midnight, the strange hush of the empty cells echoing in his mind. The three Lenas sat quietly in their separate cages, their eyes hollow with confusion, as if they were sleepwalking through someone else's nightmare. Jack drove home through the mist, headlights barely piercing the fog, questions crawling over his thoughts. Was this a trick, a cruel prank, some elaborate glitch in reality, or just in their system? He couldn't shake the feeling that none of those answers would be enough. He barely slept, and when dawn came, Jack drove to the courthouse to dig through old files. He needed something, any link that could make sense of the impossible. In the dusty archives, he found a half-dozen booking sheets. Lena Hart, Lena Hart, Lena Hart, stretching back years. The faces in the black and white mugshots didn't age, didn't change, only the dates did. Each sheet bore a different officer's name, some of whom had retired or moved away. Jack's hand shook as he copied the records, the pages soft from years of handling. The ink faded. Back at the station, the story only grew stranger. Sean met him at the door, looking haunted. "You need to see this," he said, leading Jack to the security office. He pulled up the previous night's footage on the main monitor. They watched as Jack brought Lena in, clear as day, time-stamped and dated. On another feed, Officer Webb brought in a Lena too, less than 20 minutes apart. Ruiz appeared with another Lena, her hair wet from rain, in a different jacket, but otherwise identical. On one feed, the second Lena was calm and compliant. On another, the third Lena argued, hands clenched into fists. Every movement was real. There was no sign of digital tampering, no obvious cuts or loops. "It's like watching the same scene from 3 different nightmares," Sean said softly. Jack leaned closer to the screen. "Run that back," he said, pointing. "Look at the timestamp." Sean did. Jack's heart stuttered. The video of Lena's booking by Webb was time-stamped 15 minutes before Jack had even picked her up at Ed's Quick Mart. That was impossible. Jack left the security office and made his way to the holding cells. The first Lena stared at her shoes, lost in thought. The second Lena lay on her bunk, curled in a tight ball, refusing to look at him. The third Lena paced in tight circles, mumbling to herself, fingers tracing the bricks, as if searching for a secret door.
He called out, "Lena, do you remember anything about last night? Anything that stands out?" Each woman replied in her own way. "First Lena, I was at the store. Then everything went dark. Next thing I knew, I was here." Second Lena, I think I was dreaming. I saw myself from far away, walking in the rain." Third Lena, "I hear voices sometimes. They call my name. I think there's more of me somewhere. I can feel them moving." Jack scribbled in his notepad, a sense of unreality clinging to every word. He pressed for more, asking about family, memories, dreams. All 3 spoke of feeling lost, displaced, of waking up in strange places, or seeing flickers of themselves in mirrors or windows. He left the cells and walked out to the break room, mind reeling. He'd never been a man for superstition, but this went beyond anything the department, or any department, was prepared for. He decided to call in a favor from an old friend, Erica Delano, who ran the town's small IT firm and moonlighted as a conspiracy blogger. If anyone could spot a technical explanation, or admit there wasn't one, it was her. Erica arrived with her laptop, all business. She plugged into the booking system and ran every check she knew. After an hour, she looked up, frowning. "There's nothing here, Jack. No malware, no duplicated files, no signs of outside interference. The system is acting like these are three separate people, same fingerprints, same ID, but three entries, logged by three different officers, all at nearly the same time. It shouldn't be possible. What about the security footage? Jack asked. She shook her head. If it's a fake, it's better than anything I've seen in 20 years. Jack exhaled, his hope deflating. He tried to keep his focus. Okay, let's go back further. Pull every Lena Hart booking in the past 20 years. Cross-reference missing persons reports, cold cases, anything strange. Erica's fingers flew across the keyboard. Jack, you need to see this. There are Lena Hart bookings going back to the early 80s. Same face, always a few years apart, and I'm seeing a pattern. Every time a Lena appears, a missing persons report goes cold somewhere nearby. Not the same name, but always a woman, about her age. Jack stared at the screen, the chill creeping deeper. So what are you saying? I don't know, Erica admitted, but this isn't a database error, and it's not a coincidence. Whatever's happening, it's using Lena, or a piece of her. Jack pressed his hands to his face, exhausted and shaken. Outside, clouds piled thick and heavy above Meadow Lake. He felt as if something enormous was watching, waiting, and all he could do was follow the strange trail, wherever it led, and hope it would eventually reveal the truth, before the next Lena walked through the station doors. Jack didn't remember falling asleep at his desk, but when he woke, the sun was sliding away behind the courthouse, and the station felt oddly hushed. The files on Lena Hart were spread before him, decades of mugshots, fingerprints, cold case clippings, missing persons forms with faces that looked eerily like hers, all staring up at him in the fading light. His phone vibrated, a message from Erica. Jack, you awake? Meet me at the old hospital. I found something you need to see. Jack's first instinct was to ignore it. Surely nothing good ever waited in that crumbling relic on the edge of town. But this was Meadow Lake. Ghost stories felt closer than the law sometimes. He pocketed his badge and keys, and drove out beneath bruised clouds, headlights carving a lonely path down the empty road. The old state hospital squatted above the river, red brick gone gray, windows like blank eyes. Jack found Erica near a side entrance, laptop balanced on her knees, her breath misting in the evening chill. I checked more of the missing persons reports, she said. There's a pattern. Every 7 to 10 years, a Lena Hart appears, and within a week, someone else disappears. Most of those people were last seen near this building. Jack stared at the looming structure. Do you think the hospital is connected to her? She's never mentioned it. Erica scrolled through her files. Her mother was a nurse here in the 90s. One of the old logs says Lena was treated here as a child after a fall. She stayed for weeks. The dates line up with her first booking in the system, 1986, just after her admission. Jack felt something click in his mind, cold and heavy. If something started here, maybe it never ended. Maybe she's been stuck in a loop ever since. They circled to a broken basement window and slipped inside. The place was a labyrinth of peeling paint and echoing footsteps. Old stretchers and file carts loomed in the shadows. On the wall, a mural faded to ghostly blue and green. Children, smiling nurses, a river winding away. Erica's phone flashlight lit the way as Jack led her to the old patient wing. What are we looking for? He whispered. She nodded to a door with a rusted brass plate. Hart, L room 117. Records show she was discharged, but there's no signature, no paperwork. It's like she just vanished from the system for 2 months. Jack's heart thudded. He pushed open the door. Inside, the air was icy. A hospital bed, stripped and rusted, sat against the far wall. On the peeling plaster above, names were scratched over and over. Lena, 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 until the plaster was raw. Below them,
In smaller frantic letters were other names, dozens, maybe hundreds, many now lost to time. Jesus, Jack murmured. How many people were here? Erica crouched by the bed, running her hand over the rusted frame. I think Lena wasn't alone. I think she was part of something bigger, something that left an imprint. She glanced at him. Jack, I don't think these are all Lena's. I think every woman who vanished near Meadow Lake for 40 years might have passed through here. Maybe something in this place binds them together. Jack's skin crawled. Like what? A ghost? A curse? Erica hesitated. Some kind of fracture, trauma, a break in the line between people. I know it sounds crazy. The air seemed to thicken, a heavy silence settling between them. From somewhere in the halls, a door banged, echoing like a distant cry. Jack's phone buzzed again. Dispatch, Miller. You better get back. There's another Lena. Fourth one this week. She walked into the station herself and asked for you.
Jack's hand shook as he hung up. I have to go. If there's an answer, I think she's about to give it to us. Back at the station, the newest Lena sat calmly at the intake desk, hands folded, waiting for Jack. Her eyes were haunted but determined. You know, don't you? She whispered when he sat. You found the hospital. Jack nodded. Tell me what happened to you there, Lena. Why are there so many of you? She stared at her hands, voice trembling. I was sick. Or they said I was, but mostly I was lonely. The nights were the worst. Sometimes I'd see myself in the window, but older or different. Sometimes I'd hear voices. Then one night I woke up, and I was somewhere else. I wasn't alone. I felt like I was two people, or three, or more. And ever since, I keep splitting. I'll be walking and suddenly I'm somewhere else. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can feel all the other Lenas, lost, cold, scared. I think I stole something from them, or they stole something from me. I'm not sure which. Jack's voice was gentle though his mind reeled. Do you want to make it stop? Her eyes filled with tears. More than anything. But I'm scared, Jack. I don't know which one of me is real anymore, or if any of us are. He reached across the table, squeezing her trembling hand. We'll figure it out. Whatever it takes. But even as he spoke, he wondered what price the truth might demand, and whether any version of Lena Hart would be left to pay it. The fluorescent lights of the station buzzed overhead, washing the walls in their clinical glare as Jack sat with Lena Hart, the fourth this week, her hands folded tightly on the desk. The other three Lenas were in their separate cells, each one silent, subdued, like fragments of a shattered mirror. Jack looked at this new Lena, and saw how exhaustion had carved her face hollow, how fear and resignation clung to her every word. I don't want to split anymore, she said, voice raw, breaking the silence. It's like every time I try to live my life, I wake up somewhere new, in a place that should be familiar but isn't. I see myself in reflections, older, younger, angry, numb. I feel them watching me, tugging at my memories, making me question if I ever really existed at all. Jack listened, trying to anchor himself to the realness of the moment. The police system had never failed like this before, never shown him the same face again and again, each with matching fingerprints, memories overlapping and erasing, reality tangled beyond logic. He remembered the wall in the hospital, names carved layer upon layer, as if each one was a plea for help that no one ever heard. He spoke gently. Lena, I need you to help me, help all of you, by going back to that place in your memory. The old hospital, what happened there? Can you remember anything different, anything that might have started all this? Lena closed her eyes, her hands trembling. Sometimes I dream I'm in that room. It's cold and I hear someone crying, not me. But it could be me. There's a window, and I see faces pressed against it.
Some are angry, some are begging, some just look lost. When I was a kid, I thought they were ghosts. Now I wonder if they were me, other versions, stuck outside, wanting in. One night, the nurses gave me something for the pain. I remember drifting, feeling myself slip. I woke up, and it was morning. But nothing was right after that. The world felt wrong, like my skin didn't fit, like I wasn't alone in myself. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. What if we went back there together? You and me. Maybe facing it can help you reconnect, or choose which path is yours. A glimmer of hope flickered in her tired eyes. If it means the splitting stops, I'll do anything. They drove out together, dusk thickening into night, as Meadow Lake faded behind them. The hospital loomed ahead, silent and empty, a relic holding decades of sorrow. Lena paused at the door, but Jack gently guided her inside, his flashlight dancing over peeling paint and shadows. Room 117. The door creaked open, and the air inside felt colder, heavier, as if the space itself remembered. Lena hesitated, fingers brushing the grooves in the plaster, her name, and dozens of others. I remember, I was so lonely, I wished there was someone to talk to. I'd pray to see myself, just so I wouldn't feel alone. She sat on the bed, eyes squeezed shut. Jack knelt before her. Whatever happens, you're not alone now. The shadows grew thick in the corners. Lena gasped, her body trembling. They're here. I feel them. All the other Mez, all the women who were lost. I can hear them calling, begging to be whole. Jack reached for her hands. What do you want to say to them? Her lips quivered, tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry, I never meant to take your place. I just wanted to feel seen, to feel real. Please let me be whole again. Let me remember who I am. The temperature dropped, the room seemed to spin. For a moment, Jack thought he saw shadows resolving into figures, women, girls, each bearing Lena's face, eyes wide with hope and sorrow. They pressed close, then slowly, one by one faded into the walls, leaving Lena sobbing on the bed, clutching her heart as if something deep inside her had finally shifted. When the silence settled, Lena's breathing slowed. She looked up at Jack, the haunted look gone from her eyes. I think I remember, my whole life, all the pieces. I'm here, I'm real. Jack let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. You did it, Lena, you're yourself again. They left the hospital together, the building looming behind them in the moonlight, silent now, its burden lifted, for the moment. Back at the station, Jack checked the booking logs. The other Lenas were gone from the system, their cells empty, no sign they'd ever been there. Only this Lena remained, her record intact and singular. For the first time in days, the station felt normal. Lena smiled, a small genuine smile. Thank you, Jack, I'm ready to go home. Jack nodded, relief and fatigue washing over him. As Lena left, the station's computer chimed. Jack turned to see a new booking notification flash across the screen. Lena Hart, brought in for trespassing, county precinct, booked tomorrow 3:12 a.m. Jack stared at the message, a chill prickling at his neck. He closed his eyes, steadying himself, then picked up the phone. Some stories, he thought, didn't ever really end. They just waited to be written again.
Detective Ryan Cole arrived at Whitmore Electronics under the bleak glare of streetlights, his boots splashing through oily puddles that shimmered with neon and rain. It was 2:37 a.m., and the air reeked of ozone, that sharp tang promising more storms. The strip mall was mostly dark, save for the police cruisers clustered like wary animals outside the shop's shattered front door. The store owner, Leonard Whitmore, waved Ryan over. The old man's hands shook as he gestured to the mess inside. It was about 1:30. I live upstairs. Heard the alarm, but by the time I got down, Whoever it was, they were gone, knew exactly what they wanted. Ryan surveyed the scene, glass scattered like ice, the faint whine of a security alarm still cycling through its dying tones. What was taken? Leonard looked uneasy. Not what you'd expect. They left the registers, took an old safe from the back, heavy thing bolted to the concrete. How'd they even know it was there? Nobody's seen it, but me. Not in 20 years. Ryan crouched, examining a trail of muddy footprints leading from the counter to a back room. The prints were oddly familiar. Wide stride, slight limp in the left foot, like someone compensating for an old injury. He glanced up at the smudges on the countertop, the shallow gouge where a crowbar had been used. Any cameras? Leonard nodded, pointing to a stack of battered monitors behind the counter, all rolling. Got everything, I think. I even pulled the tape for you. It's in my office. As Ryan stepped behind the counter, something on the floor caught his eye. A broken watch, face spider-webbed with cracks, the leather band worn nearly through. For a moment, Ryan thought it looked just like the one he'd lost at the gym a few weeks ago. He shook off the feeling, dropping the watch into an evidence bag. In the cluttered office, Leonard handed Ryan a USB stick. It's all on there. The thief. He moved like he'd been here before. Never looked at the cameras, never made a sound. Leonard hesitated, lowering his voice. And there's something else. He smoked a cigarette, left it burning, in the corner. The smell. My late wife used to wear that kind of lipstick. Never smelled it since she passed. Ryan frowned, accepting the USB. You're sure? Positive, Leonard whispered. Almost made me think it was a ghost. Ryan offered a tight smile. He'd heard stranger things on the job, but ghosts weren't his beat. He stepped outside, finding his partner Maya waiting by the cruiser. Owner gave me the surveillance footage. Says the thief knew his way around. Didn't bother with the cash, just took an old safe. Maya raised an eyebrow. Odd, you think it's personal? Feels like it, Ryan said, glancing back at the store. The safe wasn't visible, wasn't marked on any inventory. Someone who knew the place, or who knew Whitmore's habits. He popped the trunk and stashed the evidence. The broken watch, the lipstick-smudged cigarette butt, the muddy print impressions he'd cut from the back office carpet. As he closed the trunk, he caught a glimpse of his own reflection in the car window, pale, tense, more tired than he liked to admit. They canvassed the block as sunrise bled into the sky, talking to a few half-awake neighbors. Nobody had seen anything but a shadow, a hooded figure, moving quick and low, and then nothing but rain. Back at the precinct, Maya slid the USB into the evidence laptop, while Ryan started the paperwork. Let's see what kind of master thief we've got, she said, half joking. The video feed was clear, the timestamp rolling across the bottom, 1:18 a.m. A figure, in dark clothes, and a mask slipped through the smashed front door. He moved quickly, not hesitating, not pausing to search, each step confident and precise, as if following a script. He disabled the alarm, cut straight to the back room, knelt by the safe. Ryan leaned in. Pause it there. Maya froze the image. The thief's hands were gloved, but the way he hunched, the shape of his shoulders, even the slight limp in the left foot. Ryan's mind shivered at the familiarity. Could be anyone, Maya said, but her tone wasn't convinced. They kept watching. The thief cracked the safe, fast, like he knew the code. Before leaving, he stepped into the corner, lit a cigarette, and stood in the shadows for a long moment. Then, facing the back camera, he pulled off his mask. Ryan's stomach dropped. He stared at his own face on the screen. Same jaw, same scar along the chin, the same haunted look in his eyes. Maya's breath caught. She rewound the footage and played it again, this time in silence. Ryan's hands shook as he reached for the evidence bag with the broken watch, turning it over, searching for the initials he always scratched inside the leather band. Wasi, there they were,
barely visible in the dim light. He forced himself to look at Maya. It can't be. I was home. Sarah was with me. But the tape didn't lie, and as Maya replayed it again, the Ryan on the screen stared straight at the camera, a hollow smile curling on his lips. Ryan barely heard Maya as she called his name, her hand hovering uncertainly over the laptop's pause button. The image of himself, impossibly, undeniably himself, stared back from the grainy security feed, expression half smirk, half warning. The seconds ticked on the footage, but in the evidence room, time felt frozen. Ryan could hear his own breathing, sharp and shallow, as Maya finally found her voice. "Ryan, is there any way you were here last night?" she asked, her tone measured, careful not to sound accusatory. "Sleepwalking, medication, anything?" Ryan shook his head numbly. "No, I was at home. Sarah and I watched that documentary on cold cases, then went to bed. She'd vouch for me." But even as he said it, doubt was already worming in. Had he really stayed in all night? Was it possible he'd gone out and not remembered? He tried to summon every detail of the night before. Sarah's laughter, the cold glass of ginger ale, the dog whining for a late walk. No gaps, no strange dreams. And yet, the screen did not lie. Maya studied the video again, zooming in on the thief's face, then slowing the clip. No weird digital artifacts, no cuts, no overlays. "If this is a deep fake, it's the best I've ever seen." She turned to him, eyes searching. "What about the watch, the one they found?"
Ryan's mouth went dry. He pulled the evidence bag from his jacket pocket, laid it on the table. The band was fraying, a little nick near the buckle, just like the watch he'd lost. He unsealed the bag and turned it over in his hands, heart pounding. There etched inside the leather, faded but visible, were the letters RC. Maya exhaled, shoulders slumping. "Ryan, it's not possible." He tried to laugh, but it came out as a broken sigh. "Tell me about it." A knock at the door made them both jump. It was Captain Delaney, peering in, his face pinched with worry. "Maya, Ryan, you two got a minute?" Maya nodded, quickly closing the laptop as Ryan slipped the watch back into the bag. Delaney's eyes flicked between them. "I just got off with internal affairs. Someone flagged the tape already. Probably Whitmore. I need you both to give statements, right now." Ryan felt his world shrink around him. "You're treating me like a suspect." Delaney's voice was low. "Not my choice. The tape's clear as day, Ryan. I need you to think. Any enemies, anyone who'd want to frame you, anyone who could get your face and your prints." Ryan tried to imagine who could hate him enough, who could be this precise. He came up blank. "No one I know. And my prints. We'll check," Delaney said. "But you know how this looks." They walked together to the interrogation room, Maya squeezing Ryan's arm. "I'll vouch for you," she whispered. "We'll figure this out." The questions came hard and fast. Where was he between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m.? Had he ever visited Whitmore's? Could he have given anyone a set of keys, the safe code, anything at all? Ryan answered every question, sticking to what he knew was true, but all the while, the tape replayed in his mind, his own face, the limp, the watch, even the way the thief paused to smoke a cigarette. He didn't smoke, but Sarah did, sometimes, late at night, when she couldn't sleep. Afterwards, Ryan sat in the precinct break room, head in his hands, the day unraveling around him. He texted Sarah, "Can you call me?" and waited for a reply that didn't come. It was noon before Maya found him, eyes red from lack of sleep. "They're running your prints against the scene. If they match, they'll have to suspend you." Ryan's hands trembled. "What about my car, the neighbors, anything on the traffic cams?" Maya shook her head. "Nothing unusual, but get this. There's footage from a security cam down the street from Whitmore's. Caught the thief getting into a car. Your car, Ryan. Same plate. It left at 1:27 a.m. and drove north. I double-checked. Your car hasn't moved from your driveway since last night. But the camera shows it. Ryan rubbed his eyes. None of this is real. I have to talk to Sarah. He went home to find Sarah waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, worry etched on her face. Ryan, what's going on? 2 detectives came by. They asked about your watch, about last night. I told them you were home, but are you sure you didn't go out? He met her gaze, searching for reassurance, and finding only more doubt. I didn't. You know I didn't. Sarah hesitated. I woke up around 1. The dog was barking at the back door. I thought I saw you in the hallway, but you never answered when I called. Ryan felt something deep inside him twist. It wasn't me, I promise. He looked at his own hands, at the watch in the evidence bag, and at the man in the mirror above the kitchen sink, the lines around his eyes, the scar on his chin. He'd never felt less certain that he was the only Ryan Cole walking the earth. Ryan slept badly, haunted by visions of his own face, flickering in the static of security feeds, by the silent accusation in Maya's eyes, and the way Sarah flinched when she thought he wasn't looking. By morning, the precinct felt colder, the city less familiar. He arrived to find internal affairs agents already occupying his desk, bagging up his files, his mug, even his family photo. Captain Delaney barely met his gaze. Administrative leave, Ryan. Standard procedure. They'll call you when they're ready for your statement. Delaney's words were blunt, but there was a flicker of sympathy in his tired eyes. Don't do anything stupid. Ryan nodded and left, trying not to look like a man exiled from his own life. He walked for hours, retracing the route between his house and Whitmore Electronics. He looked for anything out of place, new security cameras, strange cars, even faces in the crowd that lingered a fraction too long. But everything was normal, crushingly, impossibly normal. The city had carried on, as if nothing extraordinary had happened, as if he hadn't watched himself commit a crime he could not remember. He returned home just after noon. Sarah was in the living room, scrolling her phone. She barely glanced up when he entered. They called from the precinct, she said quietly. They asked if I'd noticed any changes in you, if you'd ever been violent. Ryan winced. And what did you say? That you're not that kind of man, that you couldn't have done any of it? Her voice wavered, uncertainty coiling in the silence between them. He went to his study and shut the door, desperate for answers. He made a list, every detail from the night of the break-in, every tiny thing he could remember. He wrote down what he ate, what he watched, even what pajamas he wore. No gaps, no blackouts. He called Maya. She answered on the first ring, voice low. They've got a print match from the watch, Ryan. It's yours. IA is convinced. But there's something else, something you need to see. She met him at a coffee shop on the edge of town. Maya looked tired but determined, a folder tucked under her arm. I pulled old case files from Whitmore's, she said. 10 years ago, you worked a break-in there, remember? Back when you were a rookie. Ryan searched his memory. He remembered a string of robberies, some tech stolen, a suspect never caught. I barely remember it, he admitted. Maya slid a series of photos across the table. Look at this. The break-in was almost identical. Alarm bypassed. Only the safe touched. Your report says you found a broken watch, just like this time. He stared at the grainy photos, a chill running through him. You think this is connected? I think someone is playing with you. Or maybe it's something deeper. Maya hesitated. There's more. Security footage from that old case, different cameras, old tech, but the thief, he moved just like you. Same build, same limp. Ryan's heart hammered. I didn't limp back then. Maya shrugged. Maybe you do now because of him. Or maybe, she shook her head, frustrated. Or maybe there's no difference between you. Maybe there never was. Ryan swallowed, knuckles white around his coffee cup. You think I did it? Even then, I don't know what I think, but I believe you're scared, Ryan, and I believe you didn't mean for any of this. He leaned back, mind racing. Whoever or whatever did this, it knows everything about me, my habits, my injuries, even how I move. Maya bit her lip. I looked into deep fake tech, into identity theft. None of it explains the physical evidence. The car, the watch, the prints. It's like someone rewrote the night, using your life as a template. Ryan's phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered, wary. A distorted version of his own voice whispered, "Stop digging, Ryan. You won't like what you find." The line went dead. Maya's eyes widened. Who was that? He replayed the message. The voice was his, lower, static, crackled, but definitely his. His hands shook. "I think I'm being watched," he said, his own words sounding foreign. Maya squeezed his shoulder. "We'll figure this out. I promise. Do you need to be careful?" That night, Ryan found himself jumping at every sound in his house, checking locks, scanning reflections in the windows. When he finally slept, he dreamed of standing outside Whitmore Electronics, staring into the security camera as rain poured down, his own eyes looking back at him, empty, smiling, knowing things he never would. In the morning, Sarah found him in the kitchen, staring at the mirror. "You okay?" she asked gently. Ryan didn't answer. He wasn't sure how to explain the feeling that somewhere out there, another version of himself was moving through the city, following old routines, rewriting old memories, and that sooner or later, they would meet. To Ryan's world had shrunk to the size of his paranoia. Every mirror, every pane of glass, every passing bus window became a moment of dread, a chance to see his own face in a place it shouldn't be. Even Sarah's presence felt tenuous, as if any second she might look up and see someone else living inside his skin. He stopped answering calls from the precinct, from IA, even from Maya, who left worried messages that grew shorter and sharper as the days dragged by. He spent hours pacing his house, reading and rereading the old Whitmore case file Maya had given him. The more he studied it, the more impossible it seemed. The thief in the ancient footage, same build, same walk, even a nervous habit of scratching the jawline. The old witness statements described the same limp, the same gloved hands, yet Ryan couldn't remember any of it, not even the smallest detail. If it really was him, then how had his own memories been stolen? Too late one night, unable to sleep, Ryan sat at the kitchen table and traced the scratches inside the old watch band, the initials RC, again and again. His thoughts whirled. Identity theft, some rare form of dissociation. Was he sick? Or worse, was the real Ryan Cole still out there, and he was only a shadow? He decided, finally, that answers would only come from facing the impossible. The next morning, before Sarah woke, he drove back to Whitmore Electronics. The windows were boarded now, police tape fluttering in the breeze. He walked the perimeter, eyes hunting for anything left behind, some trace that could explain how a man could split into two and not even know it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Maya. For a long moment, Ryan considered letting it ring out, but then he answered, voice hoarse. "Yeah, I found something," Maya said. "It's about the safe. You need to see this." They met at her apartment, where she'd set up a wall of notes and photographs, a mosaic of the old case, the new crime, and every scrap of evidence that tied Ryan to both. Maya pointed to a faded photograph of the safe, taken just after the first robbery years ago. "Look at this. It's not just an old safe. It belonged to a guy named Charles Gentry, a suspect from your rookie case.
never caught. The rumor was he kept blackmail material in there, stuff he'd collected on half the city's old guard. But after that break-in, the safe disappeared from evidence, and no one ever found out what was inside. Ryan stared at the photograph. You think someone was after the safe this whole time? Maybe, Maya said. But here's the weird part. I found Gentry's old arrest file, the booking photo. He looks just like you. Same eyes, same scar. Ryan's breath caught. That's not possible. My scar. He pressed a finger to his chin, suddenly unsure how he'd gotten it. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. I think this is about more than just a robbery. I think you're part of something old, Ryan, something that started before you were born. The city, the safe, Gentry, all of it. Maybe it's trauma, maybe it's family, maybe it's something neither of us can explain. Ryan tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. His phone vibrated again, an anonymous text, just a number 117. He frowned. Maya, what does 117 mean? She checked her notes. Room 117. That's where Gentry was questioned, back in the old courthouse. And it's also where they kept you, after the break-in, when you blacked out for 6 hours, and couldn't explain why. Ryan's memories fractured, a sudden split of blinding white, and then darkness. He remembered waking in that windowless room, covered in sweat, the safe open at his feet. No memory of how he'd gotten there, or what he'd done. Maya stared at him, realization dawning. Ryan, you said you never smoked, but in the security footage, the thief does, just like Gentry did. It's not just your identity being stolen, it's being rewritten. Panic crawled through Ryan's skin. So what am I then? Just a copy, a ghost? Maya shook her head. You're still you, but something's using your life, your body, for its own reasons. It wants the safe. It wants to finish what Gentry started. Ryan stood abruptly, the room spinning. If it wants me, then it'll have to come get me. He reached for his jacket. I'm going back to the courthouse, room 117. If there are answers, that's where they'll be. Maya caught his arm. You shouldn't go alone. He forced a smile, but there was nothing light in his eyes. Maybe I won't be. Maybe I'll finally meet the other me. As he walked out into the gray city, the glassy eyes in the bus windows followed him, reflecting 1,000 possible Ryans in the passing morning light. And for the first time, he wondered if the face he'd see in room 117 would be his own, or something far older, looking back through borrowed eyes.
Ryan parked outside the old courthouse as dusk melted into rain, the city's heart beating slow and uneasy behind the broken columns. He left the car idling, the wipers slapping back and forth in a rhythm that only heightened his dread. For a moment he watched his own reflection in the glass, a pale, hollow-eyed detective staring back, rainwater twisting his face into someone he barely recognized. He stepped inside. The courthouse was nearly deserted, just a lone security guard reading a battered paperback by the door. Ryan nodded and moved through the halls, his footsteps echoing off marble that smelled faintly of mold and history. At the end of a long corridor stood room 117. He paused outside, heart pounding, fingers tracing the scar on his chin. Was this where it started, or where it ended? He opened the door. The lights flickered, old fluorescents buzzing. The room looked like any other interrogation suite. A battered table, 2 metal chairs, a wide mirror on one wall. But Ryan's skin prickled as he stepped inside, every instinct screaming that he was not alone. He sat down, facing the mirror. Rain drummed softly on the window, blurring the outside world. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the doorknob turned. Ryan tensed. Another man entered, moving with a familiarity that set Ryan's teeth on edge. He wore Ryan's face, down to the lines at the corners of the eyes, the limp, the nervous way he touched the old scar.
But this Ryan was dressed in a sharp gray suit, his expression calm, almost pitying. Ryan gripped the edge of the table. "Who are you?" The other smiled, almost gentle. "You know." Ryan's throat was dry. "Are you Charles Gentry, my shadow? What do you want?" The double shook his head. "Names are just clothes, Ryan. Sometimes we wear them a long time. Sometimes we change. You think you're the first to look in this glass and see someone else staring back." He gestured to the mirror. "Gentry wore your face for a while. Before him, someone else. Meadow Lakes always had someone like you. Someone to carry the city's secrets. Someone to open the safe." Ryan's hands trembled. "Why me?" "Because you needed a story to make sense of your pain. A reason for the fracture. The night you blacked out, the city was ready for a new vessel. I stepped in. I lived in your skin, in your habits, but it was always your choice, Ryan, whether to keep following the old script or finally break it." Ryan shook his head, voice raw. "I'm not you. I didn't do those things." The double's smile faded. "Maybe not, but you watched, didn't you? You saw the tape, and a part of you believed it. You let the city make you a ghost. That's all I ever needed." The room felt colder, the walls pressing in. "You want the safe. What's in it?" The double shrugged. "A story, a confession, proof that every man is haunted by what he can't admit. Gentry thought it would save him. Megisgarded would save him. You thought catching him would save you. But you can't save anyone, not even yourself, until you see the whole truth." Ryan's mind spun, memories flooding back. The old case, the blackout, waking in room 117, flashes of the safe cracking open, shadows crowding behind him, the feeling that someone was guiding his hands, his own reflection, twisted in the interrogation glass. He stood abruptly, voice hoarse. "You're not real. You're just a memory, a sickness. I won't let you take anything else." The double rose too, mirroring Ryan's every move. "Then break the pattern, tell the truth, accept that the past is part of you, but it isn't all of you." Ryan looked down, realizing he was holding the broken watch. He pressed the evidence bag to the table, stared at his initials carved into the leather, proof of everything he'd tried to deny. He looked up at the mirror. "I did it. I opened the safe. I let it happen. But I'm not you. I'm not just a shadow." The double's face softened, then began to blur in the glass, features dissolving into 1,000 possible selves. "That's all you ever had to say." The lights flickered, then steadied. The other Ryan was gone. Ryan sat alone in room 117, the city's secrets heavy in his chest. But for the first time, he felt the air begin to clear. He walked out into the empty hall, shoulders lighter, the burden of unspoken truths finally named. Later, as he stood in the rain outside the courthouse, Maya called. "Ryan, I had just called off the suspension. The prints on the safe, they don't match you after all. The case is closed. Are you all right?" He let the rain wash over him, the answer slow but certain. "Yeah, I think I finally am." But as he crossed the parking lot, he caught one last glimpse of his reflection in a puddle. Familiar eyes, familiar scar, but behind them, the faintest flicker of a smile that wasn't quite his own. And he understood, some ghosts never leave, but as long as you face them, they can't take you over again.
Officer Karen Stone swung her feet out of the city-issued Prius and into the brisk wind that swept Main Street every autumn morning. She zipped her jacket, badge gleaming on her chest, and eyed the long row of faded parking meters. It was the first shift of the week, Monday, always slow. Karen took a deep breath, savoring the quiet before the city came alive with double-parked delivery trucks and harried commuters. As she walked, her eyes scanned the haphazard lineup of sedans and hatchbacks, searching for expired meters, missing stickers, or vehicles angled just a little too far over the white lines. Near the end of the block, she stopped. There it was again, the same battered blue sedan she'd noticed a week earlier. It was the kind of car that seemed to belong to another era, boxy, with faded paint and a cracked plastic headlamp. The city sticker on the windshield had turned nearly white from years of sun. Karen paused at the meter. The red expired flag winked at her. She clicked her pen and began filling out the ticket. Date, time, location, plate number, JLI 382. The name on the registration form, which she always checked just in case, made her pause. Richard Wells. She glanced at the rear seat, where a scattering of old newspapers and a single threadbare wool cap sat untouched. The car looked like it hadn't moved in days, maybe weeks, but there was a faint arc of clean pavement under the tires, as if it had recently been driven or rolled. Karen shook her head, slid the ticket under the wiper, and kept moving. 2 hours later, with the day warming up and coffee cooling in her hand, Karen ran into Mark, the day shift traffic sergeant, outside the station. He was leaning against his cruiser, nursing a pastry. "Hey Stone, you look like you spotted a murder weapon," Mark joked, catching her distracted look. Karen shrugged. "Just tired." Issued a ticket to that old blue sedan again, Richard Wells' car. "Pretty sure I've tagged it 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Mark grinned, brushing crumbs off his mustache. "Wells, now that's a blast from the past. Wasn't he the old guy who used to write half the tickets in this town?" "Yeah, I think so, but I'm pretty sure." Karen hesitated, lowering her voice. "Didn't he pass away? Last year, maybe?" Mark snorted. "People die, paperwork doesn't. I've seen dead guys get jury duty too. Don't lose sleep over it, rookie." Karen forced a laugh, but unease lingered as she went inside to log her tickets. Something about that car stuck with her, how it always seemed to show up in the same places, the same state of dust, the same tired wool cap in the back. She pulled up the city's database on her computer, tapping in the plate number, JLI 382, Richard Wells, address 124 Stone Avenue. Scrolling down, she saw something odd. The registration had expired 3 months ago, right around the time she'd started seeing the car, but the system still listed Wells as the registered owner. When Karen tried to click for more details, the screen flashed an error. "Document not found." "Typical," she muttered, logging the ticket anyway. That afternoon, her rounds took her past City Hall, and then down toward the library, where Main Street made its slow curve into the older part of town. She paused again as the blue sedan appeared, this time tucked neatly between 2 gleaming SUVs in front of a bakery. The meter had expired by a full hour. Karen frowned. She'd just ticketed the car on the other end of Main Street 3 hours ago. It would be nearly impossible for someone to move it, find a new spot, and have the meter expire again so soon, especially in a neighborhood notorious for having 0 available spaces. She circled the sedan, peering through the fogged windows. No sign of anyone inside. She rapped gently on the glass, just in case, but got no answer. She slid another ticket under the wiper, feeling foolish, and made a note in her pad. "Second ticket today. Car keeps moving, but never see driver." Back at the station that evening, Karen lingered at her desk as dusk bled orange through the blinds. She asked around, had anyone else noticed Wells' old car getting ticketed lately? A few other officers chuckled, one saying he remembered issuing a citation to that ancient blue box a month ago, but no one had ever seen anyone driving it. Karen's curiosity gnawed at her. She Googled Richard Wells obituary, and after some scrolling, found a brief local notice. Richard A. Wells, age 76, passed away peacefully at home 6 months prior, survived by a brother in Florida, no other local relatives. Retired city parking officer, beloved fixture of Main Street. She stared at the monitor, chills creeping over her arms. The ticket she'd issued, 3 in as many weeks,
were to a man who was by all accounts no longer alive. And yet, his car kept turning up in the places he used to patrol, always with the meter expired, always waiting for another citation. As Karen packed up to leave, she glanced out the station window and spotted the blue sedan parked under a street lamp across the road. The headlights flickered, just for a moment, as if winking at her. When she blinked, the lights were dark again. The street was empty, just the wind, the rustle of leaves, and the sense that for some stories, death was only a detour, not the end. The next morning, the city was painted silver with rain. Karen pulled her hood low as she made her rounds, eyes already searching for that battered blue sedan. The air was sharp with petrichor, the sidewalks glossed with puddles. She told herself she wasn't obsessed, that plenty of cars dodged meters and reappeared in the same places, and plenty of mistakes happened in the city's old databases. But as she turned onto Maple Avenue, her pulse quickened. There it was again, the blue sedan, tucked between a white pickup and a battered green Subaru, driver's window streaked with last night's rain. She stepped closer, scanning the car. The familiar wool cap still sat on the back seat, drooping like a tired sentinel. The meter flashed red. Karen peered at the license plate, JLY 382. Same as before. She bent to check for chalk on the tires, some sign another officer had been by, but the marks from yesterday were gone, washed away by the rain, or maybe never there to begin with.
A chill crawled down her back. She looked up and down the street, not a soul nearby. She wrote another ticket, tucking it beneath the wiper. Just as she stepped away, she glanced at the windshield and noticed the 3 other tickets she'd written, still there, edges curling, paper faded and limp from damp weather, none removed or even touched. It was as if no one ever came to claim the car, yet it moved just the same. Back at the station, Karen brought it up again with Mark, while they brewed coffee. That Wells car, I ticketed it twice yesterday, opposite ends of Main Street, didn't see a driver once. Now it's on Maple. All my tickets are still there. Mark chuckled. Haunted wheels, Stone. Maybe the city just wants your overtime. But when she pressed, he admitted he'd never seen anyone behind the wheel either. Maybe some tow trucks playing tricks. Karen decided she needed answers. She pulled the old registration and punched the address into her GPS. Stone Avenue wasn't far, a row of narrow houses, with peeling paint and front steps, sinking into the grass. Number 124 looked abandoned, its mailbox stuffed with flyers, a rusty porch swing rocking slowly in the wind. She knocked anyway. An upstairs window creaked open, and an elderly woman's face appeared, pale and pinched. Looking for someone. I'm Officer Stone. Sorry to bother you. Did you know Richard Wells? The woman's brow furrowed. Richie? I used to. He passed last spring. Poor man. Heart attack, I think. Did he live alone? She nodded. No family left. Not since his brother moved away. Just Richie and his car. That old thing's still parked around town, isn't it? The woman's gaze sharpened, almost sly. I see it sometimes. Late at night, headlights on, engine running, nobody inside, always seems to find its way back to Main Street. Karen thanked her, retreating as the window slid shut. Her skin prickled. She drove around for another hour, hoping to catch the blue sedan in motion, waiting at crosswalks, double-backing through alleys, but the car never appeared, except parked, always waiting, always empty. She tried a different tactic, city traffic cams. She pulled up the city's network and punched in the intersection near the bakery where she'd ticketed the sedan. Fast-forwarding through the last 48 hours, she watched cars and delivery vans flicker through the rain, but the blue sedan never entered or left the frame. 1 second, the space was empty. The next, there it was. Foggy windows, meters blinking red, ticket stubs piling higher. She checked another camera, this one on Main Street. The footage skipped a few seconds. A bus rolled past, and after it cleared the view, the sedan was suddenly there, parked between a minivan and a city truck. No sign of a driver, no door opening, just a ghostly arrival. By afternoon, curiosity had curdled into obsession. Karen scanned through months of ticket logs and found a strange pattern. Other officers had written dozens of citations to the same plate, all over town. For years, none had ever seen the car being moved, nor anyone at the wheel. Mark watched her, amused and a little concerned. "You going full Mulder on me?" She shook her head, lips pressed tight. "I just want to know how a dead man's car keeps breaking the law." That evening, as the sun set behind City Hall, Karen walked to her own car and paused. Across the lot, in the shadows near a busted lamp, sat the blue sedan. The dashboard was littered with old ticket stubs, some yellowed, edges torn, dates stretching back over a decade. She stepped closer, pressing her face to the window. The interior was neat, almost reverent. Faded ticket books sat beside a rolled-up city parking map. On the front seat, a laminated photo badge with a name in bold, Richard Wells, Parking Enforcement. A shiver ran through her. She stepped back, and as she did, the radio inside the sedan crackled to life. Soft static, then a faint old-fashioned tune, like a song drifting in from another time. Karen stared, heart thudding, as the headlights flickered, once, twice, and then stilled. She turned away, the tune still playing in her head, and wondered how much longer she could convince herself that there was a simple living explanation for any of it. Karen spent a restless night, replaying every strange detail, the piling tickets, the blue sedan's uncanny disappearances, the ghostly music echoing from an empty car. By dawn, she felt the city had changed around her, every curb and crosswalk holding a secret she was just starting to see. That morning, instead of heading straight to her route, she sat in the parking lot of the station, thumbing through old parking ticket records on her tablet. The logs went back nearly 15 years. Richard Wells's sedan popping up in every season, at nearly every meter in town, sometimes 3 or 4 times in a week. Always the same ticketing code, the same faded description: blue sedan, registration JLY 382, expired meter. The officers' names cycled, sometimes Mark, sometimes officers she'd never even met, but all described the same odd pattern: tickets piling up, never paid, always left on the windshield until rain washed them away, or the wind scattered them. Karen dug deeper, searching city payroll records and old newspaper clippings for Richard Wells. She found a grainy photo of him in an old city newsletter, a tall thin man with a wry smile, dressed in the neat blue uniform of a parking officer. The caption read, "Honoring 30 years of service, Richard Wells to retire next month." The date was just 2 weeks before his obituary. Another headline caught her eye: "Beloved parking officer passes away on the job." A chill ran down her spine. Had Wells died while working his last shift? She found another article, this one short and somber: "Richard Wells, 76, died suddenly of a heart attack while writing a ticket on Main Street." It even named the block, right where Karen had first found the blue sedan. She sat back, goosebumps rising along her arms. It was as if Wells's routine, the rules had continued on, even after his death. But how could a car keep moving without a driver, and why would it always wind up at the same meters he'd patrolled? That day Karen skipped her usual rounds and walked the old Main Street route instead, her ticket pad in hand. She watched every alley and side street, determined to see the car arrive, to catch whoever was moving it. But hours passed, and the blue sedan never appeared. She circled back to the bakery, sat on a bench across the street, and waited until sunset. The sidewalks emptied, lights winked on in the shop windows, and finally, as the sky turned violet, She saw headlights flicker in the distance. The blue sedan rolled slowly into view, almost gliding, its engine whisper quiet. It slid into a spot by a broken meter and stopped. Karen's heart thudded. She forced herself to approach, notebook ready, trying to look casual. The car was empty. She circled it slowly. The driver's seat was pristine, with only a faint depression in the cushion. The wool cap was gone, but an old city parking badge now lay neatly on the dash. The keys hung from the ignition, swaying as if recently handled. Karen pressed her hand to the hood. Cold, not even the warmth of a recently run engine. She tried the doors. Locked. Through the window she saw the stack of tickets had grown, a mess of faded pinks and yellows, the oldest with dates from a decade past. All had her city's logo. Some bore names she didn't recognize, signatures looping in old-fashioned script. Desperate, Karen pulled out her phone and opened the city's traffic cam feed, rewinding to the moment before the car arrived. There was nothing, just a clear stretch of street. Then, one frame later, the blue sedan was there, parked perfectly, no one at the wheel, no one getting out. Karen's hands shook as she scrolled further back. The same thing happened on other streets. The car never entered or left, just appeared, parked illegally, waiting for a ticket. That night, she called Mark. "Meet me at the old city hall, after your shift. I need you to see something." They met under the flickering yellow street lights, the city quiet around them. The blue sedan was there, parked by the curb, headlights off. Karen led Mark to the driver's side, pressed her palm to the glass, and pointed to the dashboard. "Look at the stubs." Mark squinted. That's my signature, and Officer Riley's." "Hell, that's from before you even joined." She nodded. "None of us have ever seen anyone in the car. And watch this." She stepped back, pulled up her phone, and played the security footage for him. The car appearing out of thin air. Mark stared, his face pale. "That's not possible." A sudden cold swept the street. The radio inside the car crackled to life. A mournful old tune playing, a song from another era. Karen and Mark stood frozen as the interior light flickered on. In the rearview mirror, for a split second, they both saw a reflection, an elderly man, in a blue officer's cap, watching them with sad, kind eyes. Then the light died, the music faded, the car was just a car again, silent and empty beneath the city hall's old stone columns. Mark let out a long, shaky breath. "Karen, what the hell is going on?" She answered quietly. "I think Richard Wells is still waiting for someone to finish his last round." Mark's disbelief faded as the night deepened. Karen's mind churned with more questions than answers, but fear had settled into a strange, sharp clarity. If Richard Wells's car and spirit were still patrolling the city, why? Was he looking for closure, or trying to send a message? Karen decided she needed to see for herself. "I'm staying," she told Mark, her voice steady. "If the car moves, or if anything else happens, I want to be here." Mark hesitated, glancing at the blue sedan. "You want backup?" Karen shook her head. "No, if he wants to talk, he'll show himself." Mark reluctantly left, promising to check on her before sunrise. Midnight crept in, Main Street silent but for distant sirens, and the rattle of wind in the trees. Karen sat on the steps of City Hall, watching the car, scribbling notes by street lamp. At 1:17 a.m., the radio inside the sedan crackled. The same melancholy song played, a tune Karen remembered from her grandmother's kitchen, and from Wells's retirement video. Goosebumps prickled along her arms. The car's headlights blinked once, then faded. Karen's heart hammered as she stood and approached. This time the driver's side door clicked, slowly swinging open. The scent of old wool and aftershave wafted out. She leaned in, flashlight trembling. The interior was neat, preserved as if time had stopped. A parking book, a faded city map,
and Richard Wells's badge on the dash. In the rearview mirror, she caught a glimpse of movement, an elderly man, in uniform, face lined with worry and longing. He tipped his cap, eyes grave. Karen's throat tightened. "Richard," she whispered, her own breath fogging the glass. A chill swept through her, carrying the faintest whisper, "Not finished. Can't rest." The radio crackled, words riding the static. "Outstanding tickets. Still mine. Not paid. City's rules." Karen blinked hard. "You mean you can't rest until your car's tickets are cleared?" The mirror shimmered, and Richard's face nodded once. The air turned heavy, sorrowful. Karen stepped back, mind racing. All these years, the city's automated system, the endless cycle of tickets and bureaucracy, had kept his record alive. She realized it wasn't the money or the rules. It was duty, the job that defined Richard's life, holding his spirit in a loop. The wind picked up, scattering old ticket stubs across the dashboard. Karen's resolve hardened. "I'll fix this," she promised the empty seat. "I'll make it right." The door eased shut, almost gratefully. The music faded, leaving Karen alone in the cold. The next day, Karen gathered every ticket, written to JLY 382, since Richard's death. Hundreds, faded and torn, some so old the ink had bled away. She made her case to her supervisor, Sergeant Morales, showing the records, the anomalies, even the video clips. Morales frowned, unconvinced. "Karen's city rules are city rules. I can't just erase a dead man's fines." Karen leaned in, voice fierce. "We've got an officer whose job outlived him. He served this city for 30 years. All I'm asking is for you to let him rest." Morales sighed, then relented. "Fine. We'll petition the council to clear Richard Wells's record. But if this gets me in trouble with the mayor, I'm blaming you." Karen spent days chasing down signatures, writing reports, and explaining the impossible to clerks who rolled their eyes. She called Wells's brother in Florida, who was stunned to hear about the car, and agreed to sign the release.
A week later, the city council convened. Karen stood before them, tickets and records stacked high. She told Richard's story, the lifelong public servant, the man who never missed a shift, whose car and spirit haunted Main Street for the sake of a job left unfinished. Some council members snickered, but enough were moved by Karen's conviction, or perhaps the strangeness of the story, to vote in favor of clearing the record. That night, a clerk at City Hall stamped "paid in full" on the last ticket for JLY 382. Karen returned to Main Street, nerves buzzing. The blue sedan waited beneath the old street lamp. This time, the windshield was clean, no tickets in sight. The headlights blinked gently as she approached. As she watched, the air shimmered. Richard Wells stood beside the car, wearing his blue uniform and cap, his face peaceful at last. He nodded to Karen, lips curving into a grateful smile. She saluted him, tears stinging her eyes. Richard tipped his cap once more, then slid behind the wheel. The engine purred quietly, headlights washing over Karen in soft gold. She watched as the car pulled away, turning the corner and vanishing into the hush of pre-dawn. For the first time in months, Main Street felt still. Karen pressed a hand to her badge and whispered, "Rest easy, Officer Wells." And as dawn crept up, she began her rounds again, eyes sharper than ever, wondering what other stories, old or unfinished, might be waiting at the next expired meter. Karen hardly slept after that final night. She kept thinking of the look on Richard Wells's face. Relief and peace mingled, decades of duty finally lifted. For a while, she half expected to see the blue sedan waiting for her at every curb, headlights blinking in silent greeting. But in the week after the council's decision, the car never reappeared. The air felt lighter. Even Main Street, usually choked with commuter traffic,
seemed to breathe a little easier in the morning sun. Still, Karen couldn't let it go. She visited Stone Avenue, stopping outside the house where Richard Wells had lived alone. The porch swing was still and empty. She found herself whispering, "Thank you," into the quiet, just in case he could hear. On her first Monday shift, after the case was closed, Mark waved her down on Main, grinning as if nothing in the world could ever be haunted. "No more ghost cars on your road, Stone, not unless you count the city's budget for street repairs," Karen shot back, grinning in spite of herself. Mark's smile softened. "You did a good thing, even if it was a little weird." She shrugged, but she felt pride, and something else, a warmth she couldn't quite name. "We owe it to our own, right?" He nodded, then leaned in, lowering his voice. "You know, my granddad used to say some souls just need someone to remember their work. Otherwise, they keep walking the same old beat forever." Karen thought of Richard Wells, his car parked beneath the street lamp, waiting and waiting for his ledger to be cleared. Maybe he just wanted his record, his life, to mean something in the end. Maybe every parking ticket he'd written, every rule he'd enforced, was his way of keeping the city in order, even if the city sometimes forgot the people who made it run. As the day wore on, Karen found herself slipping back into routine. She issued warnings for expired meters, smiled at shop owners, helped a frazzled dad find his lost keys. But something in her had changed. The city felt older and richer, every alley and empty space charged with stories that might, if you listened close, whisper through the wind, or blink through a dusty windshield. That evening, Karen took the long way home, tracing the road she'd followed so many times before. On a whim, she stopped at City Hall, and walked to the curb where she'd last seen Richard's sedan. The spot was empty, of course, but as she turned to leave, something caught her eye, a neatly folded piece of paper tucked beneath the nearest meter. She picked it up. It was an old ticket stub, faded and nearly unreadable, but scrawled across it in careful handwriting was a note, "Thank you for your service." Beneath that, in small block letters, Richard Wells. A chill, this time not of fear, but of gratitude, ran through her. Karen smiled, pressing the stub into her pocket. Just then, the wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest sound. A tune played on a crackling radio, distant as a memory. Karen turned, searching for its source, but there was only the empty street, the soft glow of the lamplight, and the promise of a city that always moved forward, but never truly forgot. As she walked away, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The mystery of the blue sedan had become something more, a reminder that every life, even one defined by routine and rules, can leave a mark that lingers long after the engines have stopped. The next day, Karen started her shift like any other, but now she greeted each parked car as if it might have its own story. She never saw Richard Wells's sedan again, but sometimes, on the quietest mornings, when the city was just waking, she imagined she could hear a car engine idling in the distance, steady and patient as a promise. And whenever she issued a ticket, she did so with a touch of respect, a silent nod to the ghosts, real and imagined, who kept the city running, one forgotten parking meter at a time.
It was just after 2 in the morning when the front doors of the Millbrook police station burst open, letting in a gust of cold spring air, and a sight that left even the most jaded officers momentarily stunned. The woman in the doorway was young, maybe 22, with tangled hair matted to her cheeks, eyes wide and distant. Blood soaked her jeans, streaked her blouse, caked beneath her fingernails. She left red footprints on the tile as she staggered forward, her mouth opening and closing, as if she was about to speak, but couldn't quite find the words. Sergeant Marshall was the first to move. He rose from behind the glass-topped desk, setting down his coffee, his eyes never leaving her. Miss, are you hurt? Can you hear me? His voice was calm, practiced, the voice of a man who had seen his share of midnight chaos. But even he couldn't hide the tremor at the edge of his words. The woman blinked, swaying. "Help," she whispered. "It's not mine." She looked down at her blood-soaked hands as if seeing them for the first time. Officer Lisa Vance came running from the back hallway, gloves already pulled on. "Call for an ambulance," she barked. But Marshall shook his head, signaling her to wait. He approached carefully, hands out, soft and slow. "You're safe now. Let's get you to a seat, okay?" Lisa guided the woman, barely more than a girl, into the nearest chair. Marshall scanned her arms and neck for wounds, expecting to find a gash or bullet hole, anything to explain the sheer volume of blood. But there was nothing, just pale, goose-bumped skin and trembling hands. Lisa spoke gently. "What's your name? Can you tell us what happened?" For a long moment, the woman said nothing. Then, almost mechanically, she murmured, "Evelyn, Evelyn Hart." She glanced down at her hands, flexed her fingers as if expecting them to split open. "It's not my blood, please. I don't know where it came from." Lisa wrapped a blanket around Evelyn's shoulders. "We believe you. Just breathe, okay?" She turned to Marshall and mouthed, "Call the detective." Evelyn flinched at the touch. "Please don't call my family," she said quietly, voice tight with something like fear. I don't remember what happened. I saw trees, and headlights, and..." Her face crumpled. There was screaming, someone screaming. Marshall handed Lisa a towel, and together they gently dabbed at Evelyn's arms, trying to clean away some of the blood. But every new patch of skin revealed the same thing. No wounds, no cuts, just healthy flesh beneath the crimson mask. Marshall knelt to meet her gaze. "Evelyn, are you sure you're not injured anywhere? Sometimes shock makes it hard to feel pain." She shook her head violently. "It's not mine," she insisted, voice rising in panic. "I swear, I'm not hurt. I'm not hurt." Marshall tried a soft attack. "You said you saw headlights. Do you remember where? Were you in a car? In the woods? Did someone hurt you or someone else?" Evelyn pressed the heels of her hands to her forehead, shivering. "I don't know. I remember trees, running, branches scratching my face. I kept thinking, keep running. Don't look back. Don't." Her voice broke. She pulled the blanket tighter. Lisa exchanged a look with Marshall, then slipped out to call Detective Reyes, who was always on call for cases that landed somewhere between routine and the unthinkable. Meanwhile, Marshall tried to anchor Evelyn in the present. "Do you know what year it is?" 2026. "Good. And your birthday?" "October 4th. Marshall nodded. "You're doing great. Can you tell me who the president is?" Evelyn hesitated. "It doesn't matter," she said, her voice small lost. A few minutes later, Detective Reyes arrived, his shirt rumpled, eyes heavy-lidded but sharp. He took in the scene. Evelyn wrapped in a blanket, blood drying on her cheeks, Marshall's towel streaked with red. "Let's get her to interview one," he said quietly. "We need to find out where this blood came from, and how she got here." Evelyn followed, slow and uncertain, pausing in the bright-lit hallway, as though the very air hurt her eyes. Reyes waited until she sat, then crouched to her level, his tone kind but probing. "Evelyn, I know you're scared, but we need you to try and remember anything you can. Even a small detail might help." Evelyn stared at her hands. "I remember the trees, wet leaves, headlights, screaming, and then, I was running, and there was blood, everywhere. I couldn't stop it. I didn't know whose it was." Reyes exchanged a glance with Marshall. "Let's get forensics down here," he said. "We'll need samples from her clothes and skin, and someone needs to check the woods outside of town. If there's this much blood, someone out there could need help." Lisa stepped in with a box of swabs and evidence bags, her movements brisk but gentle. Evelyn barely noticed, her mind drifting. "It's not mine," she repeated, softer each time.
as if saying it enough might make it true. As the night wore on, the station filled with a hum of urgency, calls to patrols, forensics techs donning gloves, radios crackling. But through it all, Evelyn Hart sat in the interview room, wrapped in a blood-stained blanket, haunted by memories she couldn't claim, and a terror she couldn't yet name. Detective Reyes kept his voice gentle as he spoke with Evelyn, though every instinct was on high alert. He'd seen people walk in bleeding, walk in screaming, even walk in grinning, after the unthinkable, but never like this. Never a young woman so awash in blood, yet so whole and hollow-eyed, her words flickering in and out, like signals lost in static. As Lisa collected swabs from Evelyn's hands and arms, the forensics team arrived. They peeled the sodden blouse away, took samples from the thickest stains, placed every piece in a fresh paper bag. They clipped a swatch of hair, checked her scalp for wounds. Nothing, not a single mark, just the cool damp of sweat and the stubborn tang of fear. Reyes left Lisa with Evelyn and stepped into the hallway, where Marshall waited with a clipboard. EMS checked her vitals. She's in shock, but otherwise okay. Blood pressure's fine. No fever, no obvious trauma. Forensics said it's more blood than any one person could lose and still walk. It's everywhere, Reyes. We sent samples for DNA and blood type, but it'll be hours before results. Reyes scrubbed his chin, feeling the start of a headache. Any missing persons calls? Marshall shook his head. Nothing new tonight. Socials lighting up though. Blood girl at the station. Even the desk phones ringing off the hook.
Fantastic. Reyes eyed the plastic bag containing Evelyn's muddy sneakers. He picked one up, turning it in his hands. A brittle oak leaf clung to the sole, and a smear of green-black moss was mashed into the treads. Get someone out to check the woods off County Road 12. She came running out of the trees. There might be a trail. Back in the interview room, Lisa was making slow progress. Evelyn, can you tell me if you were with anyone? Friends, family, anyone at all? Evelyn pressed her palms flat on the table, knuckles whitening. I don't remember. I think I was alone. But I heard someone else. A woman, I think. She was screaming. I couldn't see her, just the noise, and the trees, and the trees, and a breath hitched. Then headlights. I thought they would hit me. Lisa nodded. That's helpful. Do you remember anything else about the woman's voice? It sounded like mine. Evelyn's voice quivered. But not. I'm not sure. Maybe it was me. Maybe it wasn't. A forensics tech entered with a sealed evidence bag. Here's her wallet, license and some cash. No phone. Lisa scanned the license, confirming Evelyn's address on the far side of town. She gently tried again. Do you remember how you got here? Did you drive? Did someone drop you off? Evelyn shook her head. I just remember running. Then doors, light, your voices. Her gaze flickered upward, eyes unfocused. My hands felt so heavy, like I was carrying something, but they're empty. Reyes stepped back in, kneeling beside the table. Evelyn, when you think about tonight, does anything else come to you? Any faces, cars, music, anything? Evelyn stared at her reflection in the table's gloss. Shadows, branches. I remember something cold and wet. I remember thinking I was lost. And then, her words trailed off. Reyes watched her for a long moment. That's enough for now. He stood, voice softer. We're going to keep you here for a bit, just until we know you're safe. If you remember anything, even a small thing, ask for me. You're not in trouble, Evelyn. She nodded, as if underwater. An hour later, a patrol called in. We've found something. Blood trail by the old railroad crossing, near County Road 12. No body, but there's a lot of blood on the leaves, and some in the ditch. Drag marks go toward the highway. Reyes pinched the bridge of his nose. Send a team. Start a grid search from the crossing out. Get K9 out if you can. He returned to the interview room. Finding Lisa quietly comforting Evelyn, he updated her on the woods. There's a trail. No one found yet, but it's clear you were there. He spoke gently. Evelyn, can you think of anyone who might want to hurt you? Anyone you argued with, or who might want to hurt someone else close to you? She shook her head, tears shining in her lashes. No, I have a job at the library. I don't go out much. There's no one. He let her cry, scribbling notes. Sometimes memory comes back in bits and pieces. Just rest. We'll check your address, just in case. By sunrise, lab results began coming in. The blood on Evelyn was not hers. In fact, it was not a single person's. Preliminary typing showed at least 2, possibly more. None matched Evelyn's DNA. No local missing persons fit the blood types. Reyes left the interview room to a chorus of questions from other officers, local press calling the front desk. He watched Evelyn through the glass, sitting perfectly still, her hands folded as if in prayer. As the sun rose blood red over the city, the mystery had only deepened, and somewhere in the woods, someone was still missing, or something even stranger was waiting to be found. The sun climbed higher over Millbrook, burning off the night's fog, but leaving the police station in a chill that never quite lifted. Evelyn Hart sat wrapped in a scratchy gray blanket, the dried blood on her skin flaking away, as if it had belonged to someone else. She watched light move across the floor, in thin bars, her mind skittering away from the jagged gaps in her memory. Detective Reyes and Lisa stepped outside the interview room, voices low. "She's still drawing a blank?" Lisa asked. Reyes nodded. "Everything comes in fragments, running, headlights, screaming, but nothing connects. The blood's not hers, or anyone local. County search teams didn't find a body, just that trail leading to the road, then nothing." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Either she witnessed something, or she's blocking out what she did." Lisa frowned. "She doesn't fit the profile of an offender." "I believe her, Reyes. The fear, the confusion, it feels real." Reyes glanced through the one-way glass at Evelyn, who now sat with her eyes closed, lips moving in a silent rhythm. "Agreed. We'll try a trauma specialist when she's steadier. For now, keep her comfortable. I'll follow up on the missing persons leads." Inside, Evelyn's thoughts swirled. When she closed her eyes, snatches of memory broke free. A woman's voice, ragged and desperate, echoing between trees. The snap of twigs underfoot. Her own hands, slick with blood, clutching at something soft and heavy she couldn't see. And always, panic, like cold water crashing over her. A gentle knock drew her back. Lisa returned, bringing her a cup of warm tea and a fresh towel. "For your hands," she said softly, setting them down. "You're safe here, Evelyn. You did the right thing coming in." Evelyn tried to smile, but her jaw ached. "I keep trying to remember. I feel like I'm standing in the woods, and there's a door I can't open." "Sometimes," Lisa said, "the mind hides things to protect us. But if you keep trying, little things might start to come back." Evelyn looked at her, voice trembling. "Is someone else hurt? Did I do something bad?" Lisa reached across the table, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "We don't think so. You're not under arrest. We just want to help you figure out what happened." A sudden knock came at the door. Reyes entered, phone in hand. "Evelyn, we need your help with something. We found security footage from a gas station just outside town. Would you watch it with us?" Evelyn nodded, clutching the blanket tighter, as they led her to a small room with a computer screen. Reyes played the footage. It showed a deserted road at 1:43 a.m. Evelyn, stumbling into view, clothes already soaked in blood. She ran to the gas station doors, paused, then turned back to look behind her. For a split second, Another figure appeared at the very edge of the camera's range, blurry, indistinct, but moving fast. Evelyn flinched when she saw it, her breath catching. "Do you recognize that?" Reyes asked gently. Evelyn shook her head. "I don't know, but I remember being scared, like something was right behind me." She stared at her own image, then at the shadowy figure, so similar to her own build, the way it moved. Lisa frowned. "You said you heard a woman's voice. Could it have been you, or someone who looks like you?" Evelyn hesitated, eyes wide. "It felt like I was running from myself, but I know that doesn't make sense." Reyes exchanged a look with Lisa. Sometimes trauma plays tricks, sometimes memories are shared, or mixed up, in ways we don't understand. He left her in Lisa's care, and went to review missing persons files. One case stood out: Lila Hammond, a young woman who vanished from a neighboring county 3 years ago. Same age as Evelyn, similar features, never found. Reyes called the Hammond family, and quietly arranged for their DNA to be compared with the blood on Evelyn's clothes. Back in the interview room, Lisa noticed Evelyn was shivering. She wrapped another blanket around her shoulders. "You're safe here. You're not alone." Evelyn whispered, "It's like someone else is in my head, like I'm remembering 2 lives, but neither is mine." A moment later, the trauma counselor arrived. With a calm, measured voice, she asked Evelyn to breathe, close her eyes, and let any memories come, no matter how strange. As Evelyn drifted, new fragments surfaced: a farmhouse glimpsed through trees, a girl's face familiar, but not her own, mouth open in a scream, blood everywhere, hands pulling her through the mud, a voice not quite hers, saying, "Help me." She gasped, eyes flying open, tears streaming down her cheeks. There was another girl. She was scared. She needed help. I tried to, but then I was here. Reyes, listening through the glass, felt a chill. "There's more to this," he said to Lisa. "A lot more." As evening fell, the city outside buzzed with rumors, but inside the interview room, Evelyn Hart stared into her tea, caught between memories that weren't hers, and a terror she could neither outrun nor explain. Outside, dusk pressed down on the city. The police station washed in amber streetlight and restless rumor. Inside, Detective Reyes gathered his team for a briefing, exhaustion lining every face. Search teams finished a 2-mile sweep along County Road 12, he told them, voice steady. No body, no weapon, but they did find something: a child's necklace, caked with old blood, just off the trail. Lab says the blood matches what was on Evelyn's clothes. The necklace is decades old, inscription worn smooth. Evelyn's never seen it before. Lisa leaned over the table, worry in her eyes. "You think it belonged to the other girl, the one in her memories?" "Maybe," Reyes said, but uncertainty gnawed at him. "The Hammond family's DNA is being compared right now. If the blood matches, we could have an answer for one missing girl, maybe more." In the interview room, Evelyn sat with the trauma counselor, eyes red-rimmed from crying, her voice a frayed whisper. "I keep seeing the farmhouse," she murmured. "It's always at the edge of the trees. I never go inside, but I know something bad happened there. Sometimes I feel like I'm standing at the window, looking out, and I see myself running away." The counselor listened quietly, then asked, "What do you feel when you remember the other girl's face?" Evelyn shivered, drawing the blanket tighter. "She's scared, angry, but it's like she's trying to tell me something, or show me." Evelyn's eyes widened. "There's a basement. I see stairs. There's something buried." Lisa and Reyes listened through the glass, exchanging worried glances. Reyes turned to Lisa. "There's an abandoned farmhouse out by the river. The family who owned it left town 30 years ago, after their daughter vanished.
She was never found. I want you and a search team out there tonight. If Evelyn's right, we could be dealing with more than one missing girl. Lisa nodded, already pulling her jacket on. I'll take her, if she's willing. Sometimes being close to a place jogs memory. Meanwhile, the lab called with DNA results. The blood on the necklace and on Evelyn's clothes was a familial match to both Evelyn and the Hammond family. The implications were stark. Evelyn and the missing Lila Hammond were related, possibly half-sisters. Reyes stepped into the interview room, his voice gentle but urgent. Evelyn, do you think you could help us find the farmhouse? It might help you remember, and it could help another family get answers. Evelyn nodded, though her hands trembled. I want to try. Night pressed close as they drove through the tangled country roads. Evelyn sat beside Lisa, hands clenched in her lap, eyes wide as headlights swept over fields and ruined barns. At last, the GPS marked a crumbling farmhouse at the river bend, shingles sagging, porch rotting, windows gone black. Evelyn's breath caught. This is it, she whispered. I know this place. The team fanned out with flashlights and cameras. Evelyn stood by the fence, frozen, as Lisa gently asked, "Where do you want to look?" Evelyn's gaze drifted to the back door, then to a collapsed stairwell. The basement. She's there. I know it. With care they navigated through splintered wood and peeling wallpaper. The stairs groaned as they descended. The basement was colder than outside, smelling of old stone, mud, and forgotten things. Evelyn stepped into the beam of a flashlight, her voice distant. There was a fight. 2 girls, one screaming, the other, me, but not me. She fell. There was blood. Someone tried to hide it, buried it under the dirt. The search team began to dig where Evelyn pointed. The shovel struck something solid. In the next hour, with forensic precision, they uncovered remains, small bones, tattered clothing, and the matching half of the necklace found in the woods. Lisa gently led Evelyn back into the night air. As the crime scene was secured, tears tracked down Evelyn's face, but a weight seemed to lift from her shoulders. She was my sister, Evelyn whispered. I didn't know. My family, they never told me.
Reyes came to her side, his own voice rough with emotion. You helped her find her way home. Evelyn, you remembered for both of you. The search and recovery lasted until dawn. News spread quickly, the coldest of cold cases, finally broken open by a woman who carried her sister's memory, her pain, her terror, her plea for help without ever knowing why. Back at the station, as the city woke to a new day, Evelyn sat in quiet, spent relief. Lisa brought her tea, and Reyes thanked her for her courage. It's not over yet, Evelyn said, her eyes haunted but steady. But maybe it's the beginning of the end. Maybe I can start to remember my own life now. Reyes nodded, silent promise in his eyes. Outside, the sky blushed with first light. A new day, born from truths long buried, finally coming home. Sunrise streaked pink and gold over Millbrook, painting long shadows across the exhausted faces at the station. The last of the search teams returned from the river farmhouse, their clothes caked with mud, their voices hushed in the break room. The discovery in the basement, a shallow grave, a girl's faded dress, and the other half of the broken necklace, had sent ripples through the whole county. Yet as the city awakened to headlines about sisters reunited by blood, for Evelyn Hart, everything felt quiet, raw, and strangely still. She sat in Detective Reyes's office, blanket pulled tight, sipping tea. Lisa had pressed into her hands. She felt hollowed out, as if she'd run 100 miles, and left half herself in the woods. Outside, phones rang, and reporters gathered, but for a little while, no one bothered her. Reyes came in quietly, shut the door, and set a small clear evidence bag on the desk. Inside was the necklace, now cleaned, both halves reunited. "You did something incredible, Evelyn," he said softly. "Not many people would have had your courage. You gave Lila Hammond her name back, and her family answers they never had." Evelyn studied the necklace, tracing the inscription she hadn't been able to read in her vision. "All this time, I didn't know I had a sister. I didn't know there was something missing in me, something that hurt every time I tried to remember my childhood." Her voice wavered. "Now I do. But it's not just her pain. It's mine too." Reyes nodded. "The Hammond family wants to meet you. When you're ready, I think they need to say thank you." Evelyn shook her head, a tear tracing her cheek. "I don't know if I can face them yet. Not until I understand how all this happened. Why did I see her memories? Why did I feel everything, right down to the blood and fear?" Lisa, waiting just outside, heard the question and stepped in. "Sometimes, trauma finds its way into the next generation. Sometimes we inherit pain, especially when the truth is hidden. The doctors said it could be dissociative memory, a mind protecting itself by splitting the story in two. Or maybe," she hesitated, searching Evelyn's face, "maybe the bond between you and Lila was always there. Some people call it empathy, others say it's something more." Evelyn let the words settle. It felt like both, like she was crying out for someone to remember her, and I was the only one who could hear. As the day brightened, new pieces of Evelyn's past began to surface. Her mother, summoned by police, arrived, pale and trembling. She confessed that, years ago, she'd given birth to twins. Lila had been taken in by a relative who moved away under mysterious circumstances. The family never spoke of it, and when Lila disappeared, it was easier to bury the story than face the truth. "We were so ashamed," Evelyn's mother sobbed, clutching her daughter's hand. "We thought if we never talked about it, it would just go away." But pain, Evelyn realized, never really vanished. It found new ways to be seen, through restless dreams, sudden terrors, and sometimes in the eyes of the living, carrying a secret that wasn't theirs alone. The county coroner confirmed the timeline. Lila had died decades before, her grave hidden by generations of silence and denial. Forensic evidence, the necklace, and Evelyn's detailed memories filled in the rest. The case was closed, the story written at last. Evelyn spent the next few days between the station and her quiet apartment, sleeping in fits, waking to confusion and a strange sense of peace. Lisa visited often, bringing food and gentle conversation. Sometimes Evelyn let herself remember the woods, the headlights, the voice calling for help. Sometimes she closed her eyes and whispered, "You're not lost anymore," and felt for the first time that she was speaking to herself too. Eventually, she met the Hammond family, a meeting full of tears and gratitude, forgiveness and aching joy. They embraced her, as both witness and kin, their grief at last given a name, their sorrow allowed to heal. The town moved on, its wound exposed but finally able to mend. Rumors faded, headlines softened. For the people closest to the case, something fundamental had changed. Justice, after so many years, had finally come, not just from evidence, but from a single person's willingness to face the darkness inside. On her last day at the station, Evelyn left the reunited necklace in the evidence box with a note, "For Lila, found and remembered." She walked outside, feeling the sun warm on her face, breathing in the clean air, carrying no blood but her own. Detective Reyes and Lisa stood by the steps as she left, watching her go. "Think she'll be all right?" Lisa asked quietly. Reyes nodded. "She's stronger than she knows. Sometimes surviving is the bravest thing of all." As Evelyn moved down the street, a flock of birds rose into the morning, scattering over the rooftops, light, unburdened, and finally free.